Good morning, everybody. It is Tuesday, March 7th. Welcome to the Montgomery County Council. We're going to start with two proclamations this morning. The first is a proclamation recognizing Developmental Disability Awareness Month. That'll be by Councilmember Albornoz and County Executive Elrich, who is here.
All right. Good morning, everybody. I am pleased to be joined by our county executive, and if I could invite all of the organizations who are here for this important proclamation to join us up on the stage. So March is my birthday month. And it also is Developmental Disability Awareness Month. We are so fortunate to have an incredibly rich community of advocates, families, organizations that have been working now for generations to ensure that our intellectual and developmental disability community receives the programs and services and the support that they need and that they deserve. We often talk about equity and inclusion here in Montgomery County. It is part of our DNA. It is what makes us what I think is one of the strongest communities in the entire nation. But to ensure true equity, we have to make sure that we support in every way imaginable our IDD community. And in 2022, there were more than 482,000 people in the state of Maryland on the waiting list for home and community-based services through the Developmental Disability Association alone. We know that, especially coming out of COVID, this community needs even more support from all of us. And I'm proud to have introduced legislation that has the unanimous support of all of my colleagues to create a commission. And I'm also proud to work closely with the county executive on the development of this commission. This commission will focus on advocacy and ensure that both at the county and state level, the incredible group of advocates that have been advocating for issues for a number of years have the support that they need collectively. And I'm proud to have worked with the county executive on that legislation. In a moment, I will introduce the organizations that are behind me here today. But before I do that, I want to welcome the county executive to make some opening comments. Mr. County Executive.
So thank you very much. This was fun, and it happened really quickly. Someone commented it came out as a recommendation in September, and it's already happening now. So that's pretty quick. We had a great commission, but it was overwhelmed, and dealing with both physical disabilities and intellectual disabilities, there was a need to separate the two functions, and so we did that. This is personal for me. I have two foster sons. If you know me, one of them still lives with me. He's 55 years old. The other one, whose hip is deteriorated to the point that he can't walk, is in a group home. Both of them had periods of time when they worked, and the employment for them, just the value of working made them feel worthwhile. I mean, my sons both loved going to work because it made them feel like they were like everybody else. And that's the kind of work that all these different groups behind us, these community groups, make possible. We have many people now in the county who are in group homes. We've got, I think, over 500 employed, if I read that number right. I'll check that number. 570 people getting personal supports, 890 people in group homes, 1,400 people involved in various activities every day in the community. It's a lot of people, and we know the need is even greater. We could build more group homes. We need more facilities to take care of people. I know many people struggle with their children as they get older and what to do with them and how to keep them engaged. So we've got a very active and concerned community. This committee will give an even greater voice to this community in Montgomery County and help point us in the direction of what else we need to do to help make people's lives complete and as full as possible. So thank you very much for sponsoring this, and thank all of you for everything you do every day to make this possible, because without you, legislation doesn't mean anything.
Well said. So I just want to introduce a couple of individuals and the organizations that are behind me. In a moment, we are going to hear from Dr. Odile Brunetto, the Chief of Aging and Disability Services, as well as Rick Callahan, the co-chair of the Interagency Coordinating Committee on Developmental Disabilities, and executive director of Compass Incorporated. But behind us today are outstanding individuals representing extraordinary organizations, starting with Trish Galilee, the chair of the Commission on People with Disabilities, Karen Morgret, the co-chair of the commission. We also have Kim Mayo, the DHHS administrator and of the Community Support Network. We have representatives from Jubilee, JESSA, PCR, Macomb, Ardmore, Rock Creek Foundation, SEEK, the ARC of Montgomery County, Project Search of Montgomery County, and We Achieve. Please give them a round of applause. Thank them for their leadership. And now I will invite Dr. Odile Brunetto to make some comments. And sadly, Dr. Brunetto is going to be retiring. She has had an outstanding career of public service here in Montgomery County. I've had the good fortune of working alongside her for more than 16 years and have seen firsthand her dedication and commitment as a public servant, and we are going to miss her. But with that, Dr. Brunetto, please say a few words.
Thank you so much. Thank you. You're a tough act to follow, the two of you. So good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on this very joyful day today here. It's really an honor for me to be able to be with each one of you here today to celebrate our Montgomery County residents with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So thank you for the family members, for our residents, for our providers, for elected officials to join us for this very festive event. Today we are joining everyone across the nation who is celebrating the inclusion of persons with developmental disabilities in all facets of our life in the community, and also to increase our awareness of the barriers that are faced by persons with developmental disabilities as they connect to their communities. The proclamation across the nation was first introduced in 1987 by then President Ronald Reagan to focus on the inclusion, contribution, and togetherness that is so critical for persons with developmental disabilities and all of us in our community. I am so proud to live and work in Montgomery County, where our elected officials are so responsive and so supportive, and our community at large is also so welcoming of persons with developmental disabilities. Our Commission of Persons with Disability that was established over 40 years ago has been working very hard serving persons with all disabilities. And this fall, they recommended to establish a special commission, as you have heard from Council Member Albernos and our County Executive. The recommendation from the Commission on People with Disabilities was introduced in September. And here we are in February 2023, a Bill 10-23, was jointly crafted by the executive branch and the legislative branch here in our locality. The new commission will have 19 voting members and 6 ex-officios. We are urging all of you to consider applying for this new commission when the announcement comes out shortly. And I know some of you are going to be here back this afternoon for the public hearing in support of this new commission. So thank you for that. And this week, on Thursday, the HHS Committee of the County Council will discuss the bill to move it forward. So thank you again for allowing me to serve our county residents with disabilities all these years. It has been a privilege, and I'm really ending my career on a very high note. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you for that, Dr. Brunetto. Next, we will hear from Mr. Rick Callahan.
Good morning, everybody. I was had a comment about President Reagan's proclamation too, so Odile took that from me. So thank you. So thank you for the County Executive, County Council for this proclamation. I also want to thank Odile for the years of services and dedication to supporting people with disabilities and the DD providers. The commitment has always been there, but during the pandemic, what the County Executive, County Council does cannot be measured. It's been exceptional. In 2014, the community settings rule was proclamated or established by the Center for Medicaid Services. During the time from the proclamation of 1987 until 2014, to live in the community, how the CMS defined it is you didn't need to live in an institution. So as long as you were out of an institution, we were considered to be in the community. In 2014, that rule changed, to basically say that the life of a person with disability should not look any different than the life of a person without a disability. To live, work, play, and worship and thrive in the community. Montgomery County has been a leader not just across the state, but across the United States for putting not just rules and policies, but actually investments into making sure that happens for everybody, every day for people with disabilities. So again, I want to thank everybody for coming out today for DD awareness. The work, we've done a lot of work so far, but we still have a lot of work to do. So thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Why don't you read the first four and then I'll take us home.
It's a different pattern. Okay. Whereas Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month is designated to raise awareness about developmental disabilities and highlight the importance of equity and including people of all abilities in all aspects of community life. And whereas Montgomery County has a strong history of investment in services and supports that allow people with intellectual and developmental disabilities to live full lives in partnership with the provider agencies that deliver essential services. And whereas there are an estimated 40,000 individuals of all ages living with a developmental disability in Montgomery County, it's important to raise awareness about how classrooms, workplaces, houses of worship, and communities are stronger when they include people of all abilities. And whereas many community members provide support and care to families with intellectual and developmental disabilities, support can come from friends, family members, professionals, and other community members. And
Perfect. And whereas the county encourages individuals with developmental disabilities to learn about and gain access to resources in their community, to fully participate in their communities, and to enjoy lives that include their dreams and preferences. And whereas in the coming months, the county will be creating an Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities Commission, a dedicated independent advisory body appointed by the county executive and confirmed by the county council that will be able to advise county, state, and federal government agencies on issues pertinent to policies and services for persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities, identify current gaps in services, provide advice, and make recommendations on best practices. Now therefore be resolved that the county executive, Mark Elrich, and Councilmember Gabe Albornoz, and the entire County Council of Montgomery County, Maryland, hereby proclaim March 2023 as Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month, in recognition of the importance of inclusion and equity for all, and that people with intellectual and developmental disabilities make the county a better and more diverse place to live. Signed the 7th day of March in the year 2023 by the County Executive, myself, and Council President Glass. Congratulations.
Okay, thank you very much, Council Member Albornoz and County Executive Elrich, for that proclamation, and thank you to everybody for joining us in that celebration and recognition. Next, the second proclamation we'll be having this morning is recognizing the retirement of Jane Redeker, the President and CEO of the Greater Silver Spring Chamber of Commerce, and that will be by Council Members Balcom and Stewart.
Hi, good morning, everyone. If we're going to get started on our next proclamation, so I just wanted to make a switch here. So could I ask Jane Redeker to come up? It's magic. But I would also like to ask her board to come up. Her husband is here with us today, and staff of Greater Gaithersburg. Excuse me. Greater Silver Spring Chamber to come up.
Old habits die hard.
But I would also like to ask our fellow chamber execs to come up. Paula Ross from the Gaithersburg Germantown Chamber of Commerce, Allie Williams from the Greater Bethesda Chamber of Commerce, Gigi Godwin from the Montgomery County Chamber, and Janan Italiano, who was with the Bethesda Chamber and is now with the Maryland Association of Chamber of Commerce Executives. So Margie Graff from the Greater Rockville Chamber of Commerce. So this is such a great day, and I thank you all for coming. Jane's board and her peers know how fabulous she is and what a great asset she is to our business community here in Montgomery County. Everything we do in Montgomery County relies on a strong economy, and Jane Redeker has been one of our fiercest advocates for our local economy. I met Jane over 17 years ago when we both took charge of our respective chambers. And from the very beginning, we became close colleagues, and I relied on her almost daily to do our jobs. I did a little calculation. Over the 17 years, I spoke to Jane conservatively at least twice a week, and that's not counting texts and meetings and road trips. So I estimate that we've talked at least 2,000 times on the phone. So thank you for that. She's been a great sounding board, a true partner, and a dear friend. And I'm thrilled that this is my first council proclamation, and it's so fitting to recognize the great contribution that Jane Redeker has made, not only to our local economy, to the entire Montgomery County. I'm going to pass this off to my colleague, Kate Stewart.
Thank you, Councilmember Balcom, and I think it is so fitting that we are kicking off Women's History Month today with this proclamation to Jane. While I haven't known Jane as long as Marilyn, my colleague, I can say in the time that I have gotten to know and work with Jane, it has been terrific. She is a huge champion of our businesses and our business district in Silver Spring, which has gone through a great deal of changes over the years. You know, we all know we are facing some challenges now there as well as regionally, and there's a lot of great news to talk about. And the businesses that we have that are opening and thriving and expanding, like the Breakfast Club and the Black Lion Cafe. And we just opened a Nike store there, and Uniqlo is coming to Silver Spring. And that is because we have a champion like Jane for the downtown business area. And I just want to say, with her and working with our local partners, our businesses, our District 3 Police Department, bringing everyone together, because this is really a community effort. Jane has really been a true champion for our businesses, for our region. And I just want to say thank you so much for all you've done.
Jane, would you like to say a few words?
Well, I want to say thank you to everybody. First of all, thank you to Marilyn for doing this. My dear friend, 2,000 times, that's a lot, and it was probably at least that much. We did start at our respective chambers at exactly the same time, or very close to the same time, and I count her as one of my best colleagues, my advisor, and one of my dearest friends, and I know that friendship will remain. I also want to recognize Janetta Italiano, who is over here, who was my mentor. We were kind of like the fearsome threesome for a while, and then Gigi, who was along with us. It was a great run, and but one of the things I have to say is I want to thank all of my members, and I want to thank all of the people in the business community. I've had this job longer than I've had any other job in my life. It's almost 18 years, and it has been absolutely the most rewarding job I have ever had in my life. It's been frustrating, it's been crazy, it's been difficult at times, but it was the most rewarding, and that was because of the people. We come to council sometimes, and sometimes we don't disagree, or we agree or don't agree on things. But one of the things that I've tried to do is try to help our elected officials and help everyone understand that our business owners are people. They're people who live here. They're people who have families. They're people who care about the community very much, and I try to make them human. And so that's one of the things that I understand about the business community. And that I have grown to love about the business community. I count them among my friends and my advisors, and I always will. So thank you, and thank you, Kate. It's been wonderful to get to know you. And Marilyn, I don't know what to say. So thank you so much.
Great, super. So now to the business at hand. So this is a proclamation. Whereas the Montgomery County Council recognizes Jane Rediker for her tireless advocacy on behalf of the Silver Spring business community, and
whereas Jane's contributions to the Greater Silver Spring Chamber of Commerce helped implement positive changes in Silver Spring, including the expansion of the Arts and Entertainment District to include the Fillmore Silver Spring, the development of the Silver Spring Civic Building and Veterans Plaza, and the Silver Spring Library, which is named after Brigadier General James E. McGee, and
whereas not only has Jane Rediker been an asset to her community by representing its interest in Silver Spring, she's been an advocate for businesses around the state, and
whereas during her illustrious career, Jane has been a leader in the Maryland Association of Chamber of Commerce Executives. She was once named the Chamber of Commerce Executive of the Year for the entire state of Maryland, and she has been the Montgomery County's representative on the Maryland Chamber's Legislative Committee for many years, and
whereas Jane is a force to be reckoned with, and Montgomery County is better off for her engagement, and
whereas as businesses suffered through the pandemic, Jane Rediker was instrumental in providing the support her members and businesses in the community at large needed to survive. Working tirelessly, Jane made it her mission to provide the most up-to-date information on safety requirements, and especially helped many to navigate the path to get financial support through the myriad and often confusing federal, state, and county programs. And
now, therefore, be it resolved that council members Marilyn Balcom and Kate Stewart and the entire County Council of Montgomery County, Maryland, hereby recognize and thank Jane Rediker for her service to Montgomery County and her unwavering commitment and leadership at the Greater Silver Spring Chamber of Commerce.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, thank you. Congratulations, Jane and the family. And I know that a successor has already been named, and look forward to working with Ms. Stephanie Helsing when she is fully on board as the CEO and president of the Greater Silver Spring Chamber of Commerce. And so with that, we're going to now move to general business. Madam Clerk, do we have any announcements?
Good morning, Council President, Council Vice President, Council members. We just have one brief announcement. Council has extended the deadline to receive testimony on Bill 1323, Montgomery County Urban District's Friendship Heights Urban District. Testimony will be accepted until 5 p.m. on March 17th. Please see the Council website for more information. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no minutes to approve this week, colleagues, so we're going to hop right into Legislative Day number 8 at the Council, the introduction of bills. The first bill that will be introduced this morning is Bill 1523, Landlord-Tenant Relations, Anti-Rent Gouging Protections. The co-leads are Council members Fani Gonzalez, Vice President Friedson, Albernaz, Balcom, Katz, and Ludke. A public hearing is scheduled for March 28th at 1:30 in the afternoon and at 7 p.m. in the evening. A Planning, Housing, Parks Committee work session will be scheduled at a later date. And I'll turn it over to Councilmember Fani Gonzalez.
Thank you so much, Council President Glass. Just quickly, I would say that as everybody knows, we're dealing with a housing crisis, and in Montgomery County, in the Washington, D.C. region, there has not been a permanent bill dealing with anti-rent gouging. There is no one single solution to deal with our housing crisis. That's why we put together a package that will deal with making sure those excessive increases from landlords will not be able to allow to be. This will not be able to be allowed, and also ensuring that we have more funds targeting people in need for rental assistance, as well as having money for more construction. We must increase density, must increase housing in Montgomery County. That's part of the formula. And I wanted to make sure that in Montgomery County we will lead something that is actually responsible and that won't stop development, but it will also protect tenants. So I'm very happy and glad and honored to have Council members Ludke, Council member Gabe Albornoz, Council Vice President Fritzen, Council member Balcom, and Council member Sidney Katz join on this. This is an issue that shouldn't be led by one or two people. It should be led by the council as a group with different ideas, with different perspectives, working with every single segment of our community to put something forward. With that, I look forward to the public hearing and with to council sessions to make sure that we have a bill that makes Montgomery County proud of. So thank you. Anything else that you would like to add?
No, thank you, unless the council president wants me to add any information.
Thank you, Ms. Wellens. Thank you, Councilmember Fani Gonzalez. Councilmember Sales.
Thank you, President Glass. I just wanted to thank my colleagues for taking the time to work on this legislation. Making our county affordable is a priority for me and part of my SMART agenda that I ran on. I personally know how hard it is to find affordable housing in the county. It is important that we have the conversation of this bill and Councilmember Jawando and Meek's bill so that we can work to ensure that we have meaningful protections for residents without limiting the new supply of housing that we desperately need. To that effect, we need to come together and discuss ways in which these bills are similar and amend where needed, as opposed to having two competing bills. I think that both of these bills are pretty close to where we need to be. I know from talking with developers that one of their major concerns is financing for affordable units, which I believe is where the 15-year exemption for new units comes from in this bill and the 10-year exemption in the other one. If that is already considered, why are we entertaining the idea of realistically having double-digit increases every year for families that are already struggling to get by? Do we really want to just introduce what appears to be a Progressives for Progress dream bill to stop serious discussion on this? It is clear to me that the majority of the council sees this as a priority, but we have some serious discussion coming as to what is reasonable. Thank you.
Thank you. Council Vice President Friedson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just want to thank colleagues who are part of this bill. Particular thanks to Councilmember Fani Gonzalez and to her Chief of Staff in particular, Tom Habor, for all the work that has gone into to this effort. And for all the patience as we collaborated and compromised and tried to get to a package which addresses the huge increases that some residents are facing to avoid what are egregious, excessive rent increases that we all want to fight against, while providing direct support to those residents who are most vulnerable to actually address the rent burden that they are facing, and to do it in a way that doesn't have unintended consequences, that limits our supply of housing that we desperately need to meet our housing targets that we have been working for so many years on making progress on, but have so much more work that we have to do. There was obviously a lot of give and take here. There are some who feel like this is too much and that we shouldn't do anything, that nothing is needed. There are others who don't think this goes far enough. I'm glad that we were able to come together to support both renters and vulnerable homeowners, and to be able to address this issue at this important time. I just want to note that due to the council rules during budget, we're not going to take this up until after the budget process. That Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee will take up the bills addressing these issues in June. And so I just wanted to note that as well, so everybody understands. Look forward to a careful and thoughtful deliberation. I just want to thank all colleagues for their thoughtfulness, and thank council staff as well for all the hard work in getting us to this point. With that, I'll yield back. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilmember Lutke.
Thank you. I just want to echo the sentiments of Councilmember Fani Gonzalez and Vice President Friedson, and I'm grateful for having had the opportunity to collaborate on this bill. You know, it's important that we don't continue trying to put a Band-Aid on a surgical wound. And it's important that in addressing this, we do so in a way that is careful, pragmatic, takes into account lessons learned from across the country where other jurisdictions have done similar things, and see what worked and what really did not work and what had those unintended consequences. So, you know, for me, I and I've said this to multiple people, I want us to not be St. Paul. I want us to be Minneapolis, right? And for those of you, you know, who aren't familiar, St. Paul passed a ballot measure in May, I believe it was, that just went into effect with a 3% increase and immediately lost hundreds and hundreds of units that were supposed to be developed, and had a decrease in new development that was substantial. We cannot bear this out over time if we do not have additional housing here to support our residents. And, you know, we need to make sure that we are taking care of those most vulnerable who are facing eviction and foreclosure, and make sure we are extending appropriate opportunities for home ownership. At the end of the day, home ownership and transferring from a tenant to a homeowner is an ideal outcome, and we're firmly committed to that. So thank you for the opportunity, and I yield back.
Thank you. Councilmember Katz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I too want to join in the chorus to say that this is a possibility. These discussions that we're going to have on this is to get it right. And I'm going to try my best once again not to repeat everything that's been said. Of course, my statement has always been that my mother used to say that medicine is good for you, but if you take it all at once, it can kill you. And that's part of the problem that we have. This is a supply and demand situation that we need to make sure that the community can build, but that the community can stay while we're building. And that becomes a very difficult discussion. If we said, and in some cases, this the rental world is a business, and in some cases, obviously, it's someone's home. And we have to find the spot where those two come together. If we said to any other industry, we want you to come here, we want you to open your business, but you can only make 3% or less, or whatever that figure is, they're not going to come here. And so what we have at this point, in fact, if we said that to grocery stores, we'd have food deserts. So what we have at this point is an opportunity for good discussion, open, transparent, good discussion, to come up with a solution that is long-lasting and will keep people in their homes as well. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilmember Katz. Not seeing any other comments by colleagues, Bill 1523 is introduced. Next is the introduction of Bill 1623, Landlord-Tenant Relations, Rent Stabilization, the Home Act. The lead sponsors are Council Members Jawando and Mink. Councilmember Jawando.
Thank you. I hope I can start every morning like that. Good morning, and thank you, Mr. President. Good news is we made a lot of progress. When I joined this council 5 years ago, there was not an appetite for countywide rent stabilization. Indeed, we had never passed any form of countywide stabilization. The pandemic hit, and I'm proud that I worked with colleagues past and those who returned to pass 2 forms of temporary stabilization that helped many people in our community. The sky didn't fall. The housing market didn't collapse. And I think we need to learn from that. And that's why today we know that there are still needs, and that many of our residents, the more than a third who rent, hundreds of thousands of residents are hanging on by a thread. And $50, $75, $100 a month is literally the difference between them being able to make their rent payment and them having to move out of our county, or unfortunately in some cases face potential eviction. These are small increases to some, but life-changing increases to others. We all agree, again, more good news, that the 20, 30, 40, 50, 100% increases that we've seen over the last several years are unconscionable and wrong. We agree. The question is now, will we protect the vast majority of renters who are hanging on by a thread and cannot deal with a 5, 6, 7% increase? That's the question, because that's the majority. If you look over the last 10 years, data presented by our planning department, the average rent increase over the last 10 years in this county was 2.1%, well within the bounds of this bill. Ours is tied to the voluntary rent guidelines, which takes into account inflation and is capped at 3%. I'm always open for talking and compromise. Indeed, when Councilmember Mink, and I want to thank her, and I want to thank the county executive, I want to thank the over 20 organizations represented in this packet that was delivered that has letters of support, who have worked with us on this bill for over the last year. I think process is important here. I didn't just put the bill out I wanted. I had a bill, 5220. It changed. We compromised. We worked with the community. We worked with those who were impacted. And we worked with nonprofit developers and others as well to introduce a bill that will actually provide, Councilmember Sales said it well, meaningful protection. Meaningful protection. Affordable housing is not a nice amenity. It's a right. And everyone in our county deserves to live in safe, habitable, affordable housing. As a young child, I grew up in low-income, non-safe, non-habitable housing and had to move multiple times because of code violations and cost. It has an impact. I went to 4 schools before I was in 8th grade. It matters. Thankfully, I had a community that came around me. Those stories are happening today. It's not good for our school system when kids move from year to year. That's why MCA is supporting and SCIU. It's not good for community stability and crime prevention when there's a lot of mobility. And it's not fair to families. And so I think this act, the Home Act, is the right bill at the right time. It allows for new construction exemptions for 10 years. It allows for a fair return. You can bank over multiple years as a developer or a landlord. It also allows protection and stability to renters. What you want is stability and protection for renters and for landlords. When you know what the rules of the road are, you can adjust and plan for them. And our 33+% of renters deserve that same stability that a homeowner has. So I want to thank Councilmember Mink, who I know will speak. I want to thank the county executive. I want to thank all the groups, all the renters, all the people who have written in and will continue to advocate. We have to make sure people know that 15, 8, 9, 10, 12, 15% is too high. It's not going to work. Last thing I'll say, absolutely we have to produce more housing. We have to preserve existing affordable housing, but we must protect and stabilize rents. That is a key part of the 3 Ps, okay? Produce, preserve, and protect. This is a key part of it. This bill will also put money into more affordable housing with the vacancy tax. So it does a little bit of everything. It's not the only solution, but it's a key part that's been missing for far too long. Our neighbors in Prince George's County just did it. Let's have some regional consistency and join them and pass meaningful rent stabilization. Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilmember Mink.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Councilmember Jawando, for your words. I think that all of us up here are familiar with Coach Fofo. Some of us are good friends with him. Coach Fofo is the founder of the Elite Soccer Youth Development Academy, which uses soccer as a vehicle to mentor and guide our young people. In 2019, the community and the entire county council rose up to prevent Coach Fofo from being deported under Trump's horrific immigration policies. He recently reached out to my office for help because he is facing potential displacement due to an 8% increase in his rent. A letter from him is part of your packet today. Quote, "I can't afford to continue to pay because the monthly income I bring into my home is not close to what I pay in rent." I want to emphasize that the reason that we wrote the Home Act the way we did is because Coach Fofo's story, including the percent increase that has made his housing costs unaffordable, is not unique in Montgomery County. It is representative. Since temporary rent stabilization was lifted last August, evictions have skyrocketed. Let's look at our most recent month for which we have data, February. In February 2022, a year ago, there were 35 evictions scheduled. Last month, 380. 380. We have got to pass protections that will put the brakes on this escalating crisis. In crafting this bill, we worked to understand the needs of county employees, teachers, counselors, custodial staff, bus drivers, many of whom cannot afford to live in the county where they work. 3 of the 40 letters of support in our bill packets today come from MCEA, SEIU Local 500, and McGeo. We worked with and heard from community organizations who serve renters like CASA and Shepherd's Table and African Communities Together, all reporting a landslide of tenants suffering from unaffordable rent increases and real fear about the lack of relief in sight. And we worked with policy experts who've crafted successful and court-tested rent stabilization measures locally and across the country. So what is needed to provide stability in Montgomery County? Well, nearly half of our county's renters are considered cost burdened, meaning they're spending 30% or more of their income on housing and may have difficulty paying for food, transportation, and other necessities. Nearly a quarter of our renters spend half of their income or more on housing. And of those, the income of most of them is 30% or less of our AMI, area median income. An enormous and disproportionately black and brown segment of our residents cannot just absorb annual rent increases of 6%, 8%, 10%. We need to acknowledge that for the significant portion of our residents, of our constituents, receiving an increase like that is tantamount to an eviction notice on their door. And what does living on that tightrope look like? Take Alexis Kurtz, who wrote, "I'm a public school teacher who's recently experienced a 7% rent increase. I've also faced mold, oil paint melting in the bathroom and dripping down our faces when we shower, and flooding during heavy rain. My rent is nearly 50% of my paycheck, and that's with a roommate. I'm lucky enough to be a middle school teacher at a school that gives free breakfast, which I usually eat for lunch. If my rent increases again, I'm going to have to move out of MoCo and get a job somewhere else." Liliana Velasquez at Georgian Way wrote, "It is challenging to pay a 5% rent increase. If rent continues to increase the way that it is, I do not know how we will sustain ourselves. Anytime our wages increase, high rent prices, utilities, and the cost of goods offset it. The situation is such that we are currently looking for another home outside of Montgomery County." If renters are going to have a chance to get ahead, rent increases can't be set up to outpace wage increases. And if we want to preserve Montgomery County's diversity, we must set a cap that accounts for the financially tenuous state of thousands of rent-burdened, disproportionately black and brown residents. The last letter I'm going to share a snippet of is from Mary Yuri Avila, who I happened to meet after our council town hall, which fell on a particularly traumatic evening for her. "Dear Kristen, I'm not sure if you remember me. I'm from Honduras and a resident of Wheaton. You helped me find shelter after a town hall a few weeks ago. I cannot describe how much that meant to my beautiful 5-year-old daughter and me. Unfortunately, I'm back to being unhoused. As you know, I was evicted from my home 2 weeks ago. I watched as my personal belongings and life were dumped on the street in just under 15 minutes. My 5-year-old girl played innocently in the yard. No words can describe the feeling. The best I can come up with is that I had little value as a human being for the first time. I fell behind on rent after an increase of 6%. A cap that is higher than the rate of wage growth, significantly above the rate of inflation, does not provide the stability and predictability for renters that we are being asked to deliver, that our community is crying out for. And a high cap isn't necessary. It is possible to set a lower cap while protecting landlords' constitutional and well-deserved right to a fair return on their investment. You may refer to letters in the packet from landlords who also support the Home Act. In other good news, there is plenty of evidence that rent regulations do not need to have a negative impact on development. That case studies pointing to rising rents following rent stabilization were the result of poorly written policy, and that rent stabilization, done right, is reliably effective at curbing displacement. We have the tools, we have the community mandate, and we have an agreement that something needs to be done. So let's really do something. I am grateful that some of my colleagues have, separate from the bill introduced for clarity, put forward budget priorities to increase funding for rental assistance, affordable housing development, and home ownership programs. I think those measures will receive strong support during the budget process. In fact, the Home Act includes a measure to raise revenue for affordable housing. And I'll be introducing a bill shortly, which would fund nearly all of the rental assistance my colleagues are hoping to find budget space for. So I'm excited to work on those budget priorities together. And to conclude, I'm grateful to my colleagues for engaging in this debate. I'm hopeful that over the coming weeks we can agree on a policy that provides stability, predictability, and dignity to renters. I'm grateful to council staff. Dean did an incredible job in the weeds with us. Thank you to Councilmember Jawando and County Executive Mark Elrich. We worked closely on this bill together. And I'm especially grateful to the residents and organizations all across our county who helped us craft the HOME Act. Thank you. Thank you for your time and dedication to addressing our housing crisis. If we go too low, we can reevaluate and adjust. If we go too high right now, we will displace residents. And we cannot undo that. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield back to you.
Thank you, Councilmember Mink. Councilmember Stewart.
Great. Thank you, Council President. I wanted to wait and make my comments because I think, as many folks know, I'm not on either of the bills, but I wanted to address rent stabilization today, and something I know a fair amount about because I was the mayor in the city of Tacoma Park, the only jurisdiction that has some measure of permanent rent stabilization. And as I know, as we continue this conversation over the next couple of months, there has already been a lot said about Tacoma Park, and I just want to address this head on, so maybe we could just move on and discuss these two bills and not go and demystify some of these things. First, a number of people have criticized the Tacoma Park law, noting a lack of development. Well, those of you who really know Tacoma Park know it is 2.4 square miles and is pretty built up. There are very, very, very few parcels that could be developed. And I have worked in this space for many years. And I can tell you, in the few areas where we could redevelop, there is interest. So let's just put to rest the fact that people say it's because of rent stabilization that Tacoma Park has not had new buildings. We have had a lot of redevelopment there and other things. And I do want to say that for the folks living there, we have provided a very reliable way to preserve affordable units and residents who are allowed to continue to live in their community, the children to go to our local schools. And so I just want to address those two things head on, and I hope in the coming months we can move past those. I also want to share my own personal story on why this issue and housing in general is very important to me. As Councilmember Joando was talking about before, I grew up the oldest of three kids. My mom was a school teacher in Brooklyn, New York. And we were renters. And every few years we moved. Brooklyn's a big place. And I can tell you I've lived in probably almost every neighborhood in Brooklyn and gone to different schools every couple of years. And that was really hard on our family. When you're forced to move and it's not your choice. So when I came to this county and was able to rent and then own a home, it was because I wanted to create a stable environment for my family. And that's really what I want to do as we move forward looking at both of these bills. And as we continue the conversation, I think there are some things, as I listen to what my colleagues are saying up here and as they've talked about these issues, some goals that I believe we can all agree with, and I'm going to put them out there today. The first is predictability and predictable costs. Everyone needs to be able to plan and budget. People need to understand and make choices and be able to make life decisions. Do I get engaged? Do I start a family? Can I send a kid to college? Can I go to grad school? Can I change jobs? How can I afford this medical procedure? Being able to plan gives people control of their lives. So we need predictability. Second, we need stability. And this is pretty straightforward. No one wants to continually be forced to move, have their kids change schools, deal with the logistics and the cost of that. And so people deserve to have stability in their lives. Third is affordability. We need to make sure everyone can afford housing, and we need to address the affordability crisis. And that doesn't mean we make it impossible for owners to afford to provide rental units, and it means we have honest conversation about housing costs. We also need more housing for more people in general, housing at all levels of affordability. And this does mean we need to loosen zoning laws near transit and get rid of exclusionary housing. But this isn't only a supply side problem. It is an all of the above problem. Fourth, safety. It's imperative that we make sure rental units are safe, free from mold, free from vermin, that they have updated and safe electrical work, they meet fire code, and that all regulations are followed and people are not in jeopardy of illness or, in extreme cases, the possibility of death. The bottom line is that rent stabilization protects people from excessive rent increases by creating a schedule for reasonable and gradual increases while ensuring that owners receive a fair return on their investment. So that is what, in my opinion, should be our goals. And in addition, we should make sure we are still encouraging the building of more housing. Again, I do not believe we will solve our housing issues with rent stabilization alone. And I do want to note, though, that any increase over 10% is really constructive eviction. Constructive eviction is a landlord's effort to remove a tenant through means other than formal eviction. But the result is the same. And particularly in a county where we have been unable in Annapolis to pass just cause eviction, allowing rental increases over 10% does put more people in jeopardy. And I do really want to emphasize that for landlords and builders, we need to create a fair return for their investment. We need to make sure they are able to keep up on the maintenance of their properties and that we still encourage people to come here and build new housing. Finally, I want to note that for both of the bills being introduced today, the issues, as I've said, are more than just focusing on the allowable rates of increase. There are many other factors we've all talked about over the last few months and will continue to. We need to make sure we do no harm to the affordable housing units we have. We need to address safety, invest in inspections and inspectors. We need to make sure folks who own the units can make it work for their budgets. And we need to find alternatives to unfair evictions. So I think the goals are predictability, affordability, stability, and safe housing for all. And as I work with my colleagues and all of you, I pledge to do everything I can to deliver on these goals. And I truly look forward to the upcoming discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Stewart. I appreciate the conversation that my colleagues have engaged in this morning, the legislation that has been put forward. And this is the start of this public policy conversation. And a number of us, I think all of us, it's fair to say, have been engaging in this conversation for weeks, months, and years in some instances. A few weeks ago, I spent a morning in Gaithersburg talking with renters about the situations that they are engaged in. We talked about the rent increases they're experiencing, the utility costs that they are experiencing, in some cases $800 for a one-bedroom apartment, and talked about the high cost of living in general. And what I did was listen. And with the introduction of these two pieces of legislation this morning, there is an acknowledgement from this body that people are struggling to pay their rent and that some landlords have engaged in price gouging. That's the nexus between these two pieces of legislation. And the goals of both bills are to ensure people have the support that they need, whether it's rental assistance, housing stabilization, and tenant protection. And as we work through the specifics of these pieces of legislation, recognizing there are a lot of tools that we as county government can use to make sure that people are safely housed, I just want to highlight that later this morning we'll also be approving a resolution that calls on Governor Wes Moore and the General Assembly to allocate $175 million in rental assistance for residents across the state of Maryland, so that more than 17,000 families across the state get the support that they need in real time. Because we've been providing that support here in Montgomery County, helping more than 30,000 families over the pandemic, and that money is quickly evaporating. And so this conversation today might be about pieces of legislation regarding rents and housing stability, but part of this conversation will also shift to the budget when that gets introduced on March 15th. And so, as I said, there are a lot of different ways that we can engage in this conversation, and the introduction of these two pieces of legislation is just the start of it. I appreciate all of my colleagues for their thoughtful comments, the work. I appreciate everyone in the community for their engagement. And with that, a public hearing for this piece of legislation is scheduled for March 28th at 1:30 in the afternoon and at 7 p.m. in the evening. And a Planning, Housing, Parks Committee work session will be scheduled for a later date. And with that, Bill 1623 is introduced. We will now go to a work session on Bill 1822, Noise Control Leaf Blower Amendments. The T&E recommends enactment with amendments, and before I turn it over to Ms. McCartney-Green, let me provide some background on this piece of legislation, which is otherwise known as the gas leaf blower ban. This legislation was introduced by the county executive back on June 21st of last year, and a public hearing was held on September 20th of last year. The first time that it received a public work session was at the T&E committee on February 13th. Many months after it was enacted and a public hearing was scheduled. And the T&E committee unanimously passed it out of committee. And during that work session, there were several amendments that were introduced to the bill. One requiring a reimbursement program that needed some fine-tuning, and that required the county executive to create a Method 2 regulation. It also required annual reporting of the program. It exempts agricultural producers who are located in the agricultural reserve, and it delays the effective date of the legislation until, as I noted, the Method 2 regulations are sent over by the county executive and approved by the council. So there are a lot of other pieces of this bill and the regulations to follow that need to be written and approved before it is adopted. Or before it goes into effect. And I know a number of my colleagues have some questions, which is why we've scheduled this work session. It is not a work session in action because of the requests of a number of my colleagues, and so we'll get right into it. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. McCartney-Green for anything else that I might have excluded.
Thank you, Council President Glass, and I apologize for my voice. Try to get the frog out. It's still in there, but I think you guys can still hear me clearly. And so Council President Glass did a good job of reviewing the amendments that came out of T&E. One point of clarification, I want to make sure that the council understand that there's a bifurcation or a split between the ban on sale and the ban of use. And so as introduced, there were two different dates, 6 months for the ban on sale and 1 year after the effective date for the ban on use. T&E committee decided that the ban on sale would still have that 6 months, but the ban of use would not go into effect until after the council has approved the Method 2 regulations. With that being said, there were amendments that were received by Councilmember Albanos and Councilmember Balcom that are in your packet on page 65. I'm happy to turn it over if Councilmember Albanos would start with the amendment.
Thank you for that. I'll turn it over to Councilmember Albanos.
Thank you, Mr. President, and in your capacity as chair, I also want to thank you for facilitating very productive and thoughtful dialogue. This bill was introduced at the request of the county executive earlier this summer, and I've learned a lot about gas-powered leaf blowers and electric leaf blowers since its introduction and digging into this issue. There is no question, and this, of course, is the first opportunity that the majority of us have an opportunity to talk about this issue because we're not in the committee. But there's no question that gas-powered leaf blowers have a negative contribution to our climate. There is no question that they are very loud and they are very annoying, and that they do disrupt people who now, much more often than prior to the pandemic, are working from home. But they are also, our landscaping companies, a critical and a very important source of job employment here in our community. And we are also fortunate that in Montgomery County, we have so many residents that appreciate the value and really take to heart the importance of maintaining their own properties. It's a source of pride for each of us to have well-maintained properties, which also helps ensure increasing their value, which helps benefit all of us as a whole. And so while I am just as concerned as the next person regarding the environmental impact and the noise impact, I am equally as concerned about the impact, particularly on landscapers, that enacting this legislation could incur. And let's be very honest. In conversations that I've had over the last couple of months, most people have no idea that we are having this discussion. Certainly not most of the landscapers, who are more often than not just one person in a truck who hires 3 or 4 people. So in digging, and I want to thank Kristen Tribble in my office who ran point on helping me learn a lot more about these important pieces of equipment. A gas-powered commercial leaf blower costs about $650 and can operate approximately 912 cubic feet per minute. A commercial leaf blower, and by commercial that means backpack, that means the kind that has more capacity. The capacity is 553 cubic feet per minute. And the cost of an electric commercial leaf blower is somewhere between $600 and $1,000, give or take. There are different models that are out there. The battery pack that's required is an additional about $800 to $1,000. The battery pack has to be charged for 2.5 hours and has about 2.5 hours of use. And so in addition to that, you also have to pay for a multi-4 charger, which is $300. So the charge of one unit is on average approximately $1,800. Now you have to buy multiple battery packs to be able to, landscaping is a volume-based business, and so you're talking about thousands of dollars that landscapers will have to incur to be able to complete the same level of work that they were competing with a gas-powered leaf blower. And the rebate is $100. So we have to be honest with ourselves about the impact of this kind of legislation on the folks who are, and then on top of that, the fines that would be incurred that these landscapers would have to pay once this particular bill goes into effect. Now, what's been the byproduct of that? DC has enacted similar legislation. The town of Somerset, Chevy Chase have recently enacted similar legislation. And what we heard directly from landscapers is that to comply with the law, because the technology has not yet caught up, let alone the cost implications, many are having to use gas-powered generators on the back of their trucks in order to be able to charge the batteries. Many are having to ask politely the people whom they are trying to provide a service for to utilize their outdoor plugs so that they can plug in their equipment while they're in a neighborhood utilizing it, which is of course not perfect and often leads to disruption. It's catch as catch can. So bearing all of that in mind, I want to thank my colleagues who have worked with us on proposing amendments that don't ultimately address the core root of the problem, in my opinion, which is that the technology has not yet caught up. I think it will, and I think over time this is where more people are going to go, but I'm just concerned about potential unintended consequences and putting people out of work. And these are people for whom this job is a lifeline. So I have several amendments that I'd like to present. I don't know if it's appropriate to do that now, Mr. President, or I can yield back to you if others want to make comments.
There are other people who want to make comments, but you have the floor, and this is a work session. Great. I would recommend you go for it.
Great. So I also want to thank Council Members Balcom and Katz, whose offices worked with us, and Councilmember Lukey as well. So the first exemption expands on the exemption that was discussed within committee. Of course, we have incredible agriculture producers in Montgomery County that are not just in the agricultural reserve. And this, of course, is a work session, and so these would be straw polls, correct, Mr. President?
Well, it would be part of the bill that would then come up next week or the week thereafter.
So the first proposal would be to exempt agricultural producers throughout the entire county, as opposed to not just within the agricultural reserve. And Ms. McCartney-Green, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that.
No, that's on page 66, just to make sure you guys have the language in front of you. And so this is consistent with agricultural producers where it's defined where their properties are agriculturally assessed, meaning that they receive an assessment for tax and they get a tax credit from that. And their use has to be similar to farming or agricultural use. So we're not talking about your community gardens or someone who is interested in farming. These are people who are in the business of producing and agriculturing, and this is tied to the section 3.26 of the zoning ordinance.
Thank you. So I'd like to move in a straw vote capacity, just so that staff can prepare. Is that the way to do it? Or no, we just need to just talk about it?
You're just talking about it. We're
just talking about it. So, yeah, I'd like to move that.
Okay. I don't know. Well, so you've moved it. I know Councilmember Balcom would like to speak, so I'll turn it over to Councilmember Balcom. Well, are you seconding it? Yeah, there you go. Do you want to make any comments additionally?
No, I'll make comments after we're done with all this.
Okay. So there's an amendment. Anyone want to speak on the amendment? Okay. So approved. Okay.
I guess a point of clarification, and this might be what Councilmember Jawada is going to ask too. There are multiple parts of the amendment. Are we taking individual pieces of the amendment or taking the amendment as a whole?
Just the individual.
It was
just the ag portion now.
There is a suite of amendments. What Councilmember Albanaz just did was just the agricultural reserve. Any objection? Approved without objection? Councilmember Jawanda?
No objection. I just would maybe going forward, if there's any to describe the amendments, so that you did a very good job on that, but just please keep doing that.
No problem. All right.
Yeah, so.
Okay, so we'll support that amendment without objection.
Great. The second amendment is under the current policy, this ban would go into effect pretty soon, and this would not allow, in my opinion, a sufficient amount of time to educate our broader public. And these are complaint-driven policies, right? So if you have somebody in your community that you're concerned about, then you would literally take their picture and send it to the Department of Environmental Protection. And policies like that deeply concern me because it pits neighbors against neighbors, and it creates a very potentially uncomfortable and conflicting situation, and that's especially true of the landscapers who are there just in some cases to do their jobs. So, all of which to do their jobs. So what I would like to propose is require a 2-year rebate period prior to the ban on the sale and use. This would provide more time for outreach. This would also allow for residents to understand what we're doing and why this is important. And I think starting with the rebate before going directly to the ban would make the most sense, which would mean that the actual rebate period would begin in June 2024, and the actual ban would not start until July 2026. So that is the second motion, requiring a 2-year rebate period prior to the ban on sale and use.
Okay, so moved by Councilmember Albanaz. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Luedtke. Ms. McCartney-Green, just as we're going through the packet, this is actually amendment number 1. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, just making sure there. Any comments? Councilmember Stewart.
Great, thank you. First, I want to say thank you to my colleagues and particularly Councilmember Albanaz for raising all these things. I will say when we met in the Transportation and Environment Committee, many of the concerns you raised were concerns that we discussed in depth. And that was one of the reasons why we actually did change and amend and asked for method 2 regulations so that there was time for the regulations to come back to us. And I think Councilmember Balcom in particular raised concerns with the Department of Environmental Protection on the $100 rebate and asked them to go back again and really take serious consideration of that, because the committee did think it was very much under what was needed. In addition, regarding the as you mentioned, there are penalties to this, and one of the things we also specified is there would be warnings before any fines were put in place. So I want to thank you for raising those things and just let folks know these were things that the committee did discuss. I'm sorry that we don't have representatives from DEP here today to, oh, we do. Oh, back here. Okay, I didn't see you all. Because
I come on down.
Because we had a very good conversation, and I just want to say on the holding off of the ban on sale in particular is something that some of the, I know Mary couldn't be here today, but sent some comments on that from the DEP perspective. And I just want to say that I actually support putting a ban in place before the ban on use. And the reason is because, you know, we can only control what's in Montgomery County, right? And basing it on our experience with Safe Grow and other things, if we put a ban in place first, it is also an opportunity to educate people about us moving towards the ban on use. And in particular, I'm just thinking about it from the perspective of someone who goes to their local Shore Snyder's or Ace and is looking to purchase a new leaf blower. And they happen to get a gas-powered one. And then they go home and read in the newspaper or somewhere else, or get one of the wonderful emails we all send out to constituents that the county is moving to ban this. And they're frustrated because if they had been informed, they may have made a different decision. And so I think we can move forward with a ban on sale before we move forward with the ban on use, and have the rebate program and incentive program in place. And I don't know if any of the folks from DEP would like to comment on that, but I thought the email we received yesterday from Mary also pointed out a number of reasons as why you all, or at least Mary, was suggesting moving forward the ban first.
Thank you, Councilmember Stewart, for the opportunity to comment. My name is Adriana Hoshburn, Acting Director in the Department of Environmental Protection. Glad to be here this morning with my colleagues. I do agree with you that the ban on sale could go forward first before a ban on the use, and the rebate program could take place concurrently. I think that pushing out the start of the implementation of this law 2 years past the start of a rebate program is timid, in my opinion. I feel that Council has taken very aggressive action on many other environmental issues, including recently. So I'm frankly a little bit puzzled as to this delay in implementing this very important noise and air quality and public health law.
I can answer that.
Well, Councilmember Stewart, are you done? Okay. I'm gonna. I'll first turn to Councilmember Balcom.
Sure, thank you. I'm piggybacking on what Councilmember Albarnaz said, but also what Councilmember Stewart said. So yes, we talked at length about the I want to talk about the communication piece. That I'm concerned about that. We had a lengthy conversation at the T&E committee, and thank you for your patience with that. I think it's we know from the county's perspective that we don't have a communication system to reach everyone, all of our stakeholders in Montgomery County, particularly this particular population. And so the part of the regulations is to look at that communication structure and strategy. So one of the amendments that we did make at transportation at the committee level was to to be able to have a look at the regulations. We've received a lot of letters, a lot of testimony about slowing this down, but I think that it's going to take a while for DEP to create those regulations because they're complicated. And so I want to make sure that part of the slowing down process is not is that it's going to take a while to do the regulations. The reason it's important to not go forward without the regulations is because of the rebate program. And this, we have the racial equity and social justice impact statement. We have an economic development statement. And a lot of the testimony we received points back to this rebate program, that it's somehow going to make the owners of the leaf blowers whole in some way. But as Councilmember Albornoz stated, it's $100, and that just in no way is going to make up for the economic impact of transitioning from gas leaf blowers to electric leaf blowers. So either we're going to have to change that rebate program to increase the rebate, and also the number of rebates available. My guess is what's going to happen is that the people who really need it the most aren't going to know about it until the money's all gone. So that's why it's so important for us to see the details of the rebate program, and that's complicated. And then something just flew out of my brain about the rebate program. So I'm sure we'll come back to it. But I also think that when we look at the economic development impact statement relies on the rebate. And so today, we started the day off talking about small business and the Silver Spring Chamber. We had a lengthy discussion about rent control, the rent stabilization bills, both talking about the importance of a stable economy. This bill is going to negatively impact a group of individuals who are going to be negatively impacted by this bill, and we don't have a good track record of communicating with that population. So the idea of why do we want to slow this down, or why are we taking so long to make sure that this bill is correct, it's because it impacts a vulnerable population, and I think we need to take our time to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Sales.
Thank you, President Glass. So I want to speak to a few of the concerns, starting with the Department of Environmental Protection. What, in your view, is the most efficient timeline for getting this done? There's been a request or an amendment to extend the timeline to, is it 2031? And
no, it's 2026,
but 2031 for 2031 for a property is larger than 1 acre. What in your
Councilmember Sales, if I can jump in, I know DEP will also comment. I had an opportunity to consult DEP on just when the timeline of regulations would be appropriate to be received by council, and the date that we had was no later than June 30th, 2024. And so that, my understanding, was the date that regulations would be received by council. However, on the floor by Councilmember Albornoz, that date would have to be moved up until April 30th if we're going to consider, if the council is going to consider that rebate program. And so from DEP's perspective, at least from what we discussed, was to June 30th, 2024 to get regulations.
Okay, but it's 2031 for properties larger than 1 acre.
Right, and that hasn't been introduced yet. That's going to be amendment number 3, a later one. Yeah. And so just on the regulation piece and the ban on the sale, those two intersect. And trust me, I got confused on dates, and so it's important that we just navigate the regulation date, and the properties larger than 1 acre will get there at amendment number 3.
So we're just on the ban for 2024.
We're still on amendment number 1. Yep.
Okay, all right. I'll come back. I'm so
Not, well, that was the first one. We started with amendment number 2. Now we're back on to amendment number 1 that's in the packet. Appreciate all of this. I appreciate Councilmember Albornoz, and as Ms. McCartney Green said, and as my teeny colleagues noted, we spent a lot of time talking about this. And I just want to fill everybody in as to some of the complications that emerged. The bill that was originally introduced would have gone into effect just like any other bill, which is 3 months after passage. The problem that I saw was that the timeline for the reimbursements were spread over 3 years, $100,000 approximately, or specifically, over 3 years. And the problem was that if this were to take effect almost immediately, just like any other piece of legislation, but some of the financial rebates were not able, could not be obtained until 3 years later, then that was an equity problem. If we're recognizing that so many of the small businesses doing this work need financial assistance, then why were we delaying some of that into 3 years out? And so we had a very good conversation and reached agreement that DEP was going to work on a regulation, and we made sure that it was Method 2 regulation, so it would come back to the council for our review, and that we would then figure out the budgetary aspects, and we'll get a closer look at that next week to see if this is supported or how it's supported in the budget, but to make sure we were able to front load this as much as possible. And during that conversation, Ms. Hochberg said that they would work on a regulation, and we didn't commit to a time, but subsequently, as Ms. McCartney Green noted, DEP said that a regulation would be sent to us by the end of June 2024. Is that correct? Right. So in this timeline, the regulation is not, with or without this amendment, the timeline is already June of next year for Method 2, which would then come back to us. We're still going to have to discuss it, approve it, amend it, and then codify it in some way. But of course, the important point there is also the budget. And if we do want to make sure that we are equitable, I know we all have commitment to that, we have to make sure that it's also in the budget and placed in the proper years to make sure that people can take advantage of it. Ms. Hochberg, I'll invite you to make any additional comments if I mischaracterized or...
Thank you. I don't have anything further to add at this time.
Thank you. So just want to level set where we are. I personally don't know if this amendment is needed because I think it's already built into the legislation and the expectation from DEP. But on the flip side, if that is already in agreement, then there's nothing harming the amendment from moving forward. I see how that works both sides. Councilmember Jawanda.
Thank you. I appreciate the additional insight. And it sounds like, so the amendment we're on now is Amendment 1, correct, in the packet? Okay. And about the effective date.
Correct.
Okay. I agree and appreciate Councilmember Stewart's comments. I also agree that $100 is way too low. I understand that there was a lot of discussion about that in committee, and I think agreement on that. And I just, at this session, I'd love for DEP to comment on that in the context of the budget, because, I did my own little search, and, I know Councilmember Albernoz's team did a lot about how much these electric commercial leaf blowers cost. And if we're asking, we want to have a rebate we just talked about, and I stressed pretty strenuously that we need meaningful rent stabilization. We also need a meaningful rebate that actually will do what we say it's going to do. And so could you just expound upon the discussion that you had in committee, and what are you going to come back with something that is actually meaningful?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity to clarify. I want to be quite clear that we have not developed a rebate program yet because the legislation has not passed. And as such, we have not developed a rebate amount. I believe this $100 that keeps coming up was a number that was an estimate in the fiscal impact statement. It was developed by a program analyst who was doing some calculations. Is merely that. It is not what we intend to implement. We don't know what the right number is. We intend to research best practices and models that have been implemented in other jurisdictions in terms of equitable implementation of these types of rebate programs. We want to target the landscaping companies, the users that have the most need for it. So we don't know what the right amount is. Once we propose the regulations and submit them to council, we will have that number for you at that time, but we do not have a number yet. The number has not been set.
So I'm hearing, is there a commitment to bring back to us in the regulation a number that's meaningful and a plan to ensure that it's equitably administered to folks who need it the most?
Absolutely.
That's
that
a
is our
commitment from
intent.
you and the county executive?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. And I think that's important to get out there because we want to have it help. I agree that the signaling, one of the things that frustrated me the most, using another comparison from the rent stabilization, when we passed the temporary rent stabilization, I would hear from people who moved because they didn't know they had the protection. They got an increase that was barred, but they moved because they hadn't heard about it. And so I want to also stress something that Councilmember, I think, Balcom brought up, and Councilmember Stewart, there has to be a robust effort. This is a little different because we know the companies. You can reach out proactively to at least the industry. You don't know all of them because a lot of them are independent contractors, but you can go to places and you're going to have to factor in that outreach. I'm just going to say that, and we're all going to have to work on it. It's going to have to be a communication strategy, and it's not going to be perfect, but you're going to have to factor it in. I think that's why banning it in the stores first makes sense, because it's another part of that communication strategy. Like, you still can use the ones you have right now, but you're not going to buy anymore. So they're going to be like, what's going on with that? And people will start to investigate. You can help have the stores. I think there's a big play with the stores. I don't know if you discussed this, but okay, good. So making sure that there are signs and things at the stores. So I think we should do it because we shouldn't slow it down, because we want to, if we're moving in this direction, which we all agree we should, we want to make sure people know about it as soon as possible. So for that reason, I won't support the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez.
To me, this is very simple. When I first heard about this bill, honestly, I said I'm not going to vote for it. And I am an environmentalist. Why? Because it will affect people in my community who are the ones doing these jobs. The margins that they make doing landscaping work, it's so small. So small. And then you're adding another thing without even thinking. Honestly, I feel outraged right now. Without even thinking, what's this reimbursement program going to be? How is the outreach? This is like a perfect example of legislation that it was meant with goodwill, but it was poorly drafted. Not thinking about the impact that low-income communities who are doing this job, how they're going to be impacted. There is no reimbursement problem if it doesn't at least have $1,000. I'm telling you right now. $1,000. Because it's not just the equipment, but it's the batteries too, right? How do you think they're going to pay for it when they're when the margins are so tiny? These folks are not living in their own homes. They're living, you can find landscapers living in one house and 10 people living in them. Because they don't make enough money, which is, again, the conversation we had before earlier today. People are not making enough money to live in Montgomery County. They're not. And what you're doing is it's not helping. It connects housing, it connects jobs, it connects racial justice. If you're going to talk about racial justice, then we got to be responsible about moving forward legislation that will back up, and really have something positive and really help people being lifted up out of poverty. You're not doing that here. So it doesn't matter to me if it's 2 years, 1 year, if we don't have the financial assistance to ensure that folks doing these jobs will survive and will actually make a living to live in Montgomery County. It's great to give speeches about the things that we should be doing, but when we talk about reality, if you don't back it up with numbers don't lie. People do. So unless I see that in writing, there's just no way are we voting for this? And I want to make sure people are healthy. I want to make sure people will protect the environment, but we're not doing that if we fool people and we make changes this way without helping folks to be able to transition from gas to electric. It sounds great if you have money to support that, but if we don't have the capital and offer ways to do that, then what are you doing? Where's the lady from DEP that actually works on this? What's her name?
She's not here, but she sent us information.
Okay, great. She should have been here. I want to know about the outreach strategy that you're going to be doing towards small businesses, Latino small businesses, people who probably don't even read in Spanish, but their main language is Spanish. You see the problem here? You have no idea how this community looks like. No clue. Because if you had, you would not be supporting, putting this forward without backing it up with financial assistance that is meaningful. Tell me, show me the regulations. Otherwise, I'm telling you right now, I will not vote for this.
Thank you, Councilmember. So, according to the legislation, as amended by the T&E committee, there is a method 2 regulation that needs to be developed, and Director Hochberg stated that they have not yet begun that development and will likely not get it to us before June 30th, 2024. So there is a whole year to work on that regulation. Nothing will happen before a regulation is sent over, and then we, the full council, will have time to review that and amend it to make sure that there is funding to support that reimbursement, and to make sure that there is a robust communication strategy to inform our residents and those in the lawn care industry about this program. But your point is very well taken. Council Vice President Friedson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate all colleagues. Thank you to the Transportation and Environment Committee for all of your thoughtful work on this. A lot of amendments have come to this point, and there are additional amendments, but I really appreciate Councilmember Albernaz really diving in and digging into this issue, and certainly appreciate Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez and the passion that she has, and I share many of the same concerns. I'll note to Councilmember Joando's point, and I appreciate the point that was being raised, but we actually don't really know all the landscaping companies. One of the vulnerabilities that we realized that really needs to be improved upon during COVID was even the businesses who we thought we knew, we don't have a meaningful way to reach them. And so I'm getting a nod here from my former chamber colleague, because we sat on a lot of the calls, and one of the main challenges and focuses we had was that the county was making a lot of decisions that had major impacts on our local businesses, and didn't have a meaningful way to communicate what we were doing and why we were doing it, which caused a great deal of consternation, even when there was very important reasons for why we were doing what we were doing. And this legislation, you're still feeling the reverberations of that concern, of making sure that we have those mechanisms in place. I wholeheartedly agree that $100 is just completely and woefully inadequate. If we're going to call it a rebate program, and we're going to seriously consider this to be a way to mitigate the impacts on businesses, it has to actually be a way to mitigate the impacts on businesses. And so I hope that there is a commitment. I think you're hearing pretty universally from everybody who's spoken up to this point, and the nods of those who haven't yet spoken who will, that if we're going to do a rebate program, it has to be a real rebate program that isn't just a marginal help, but actually does address the concern that's being raised. So I'm hoping we can get a commitment that the department is going to take that seriously.
Yes, absolutely. And as a Latina member of Montgomery County and a resident of this county for over 10 years, I am committed to doing this right. I know our community too. I live here.
I appreciate that. And I really appreciate and understand the concern about the implementation, and appreciate why that is being brought forward. I will say I do have some concerns and appreciate what Councilmember Stewart had raised about the difference between the sale and the use. And I do think, and I would float to colleagues if there is interest in separating out those two, as Councilmember Stewart was reflecting. I do think that there is a much easier way to communicate if we're prohibiting sales. and much more work that needs to be done to address the use as we figure out this rebate program, as we work through communicating to the impacted businesses, particularly businesses, as Councilmember Albornoz noted, are oftentimes one person who hires one or two people to help them. I mean, these are very small, very vulnerable businesses that, as Councilmember Fani Gonzalez noted, are operating on very, very small margins. So I appreciate it. I'm inclined to support, the theoretical proposal that I think I heard.
I think it's just not doing the amendment,
Yeah,
because that's what the committee actually, right, that's what the Transportation Environment Committee
So if I could jump in for a second, and I would address your question to the council member who made the motion for the amendment. But to level set, Ms. McCartney Green, at committee, we already agreed to ban the sale of gas-powered leaf blowers. Is it
6 months after the effective date, and in this case, effective date would take 3 months, or technically 9 months after this law goes into effect. There will be a ban on the sale of gas-powered leaf blower as amended by the committee.
And the reason for that is as individuals, their leaf blowers need to be replaced for natural reasons. We should jumpstart that conversion, and so that would be banned in the stores while we are still working through the regulations and the rebate program for those who need the financial assistance to convert. So back to you, Council Vice President.
I appreciate it. Sorry if I was confused there. So the issue here is if, and I just want to understand this a little bit better, if a business has currently a gas-powered leaf blower, the issue is them having to replace a gas-powered leaf blower before the rebate program is set up. The question is how much the cost of that replacement gas-powered leaf blower would be.
So hold on. So if you want to, so are you asking a rhetorical question, or are you asking?
I'm literally asking a question.
McCartney,
I will,
Green, or
I will,
Ms. Hochberg.
Yes, I will direct it probably to the department. I think would probably be best suited to answer the question.
Councilman Friedson, Stan Edwards with the Department of Environmental Protection. If I understand your question, it was about would the rebate program offset the cost of a commercial landscaper having to buy an electric leaf blower because the use of a gas-powered leaf blower is banned?
Well, the question is that I believe that the intent of the concern here is that somebody who has to replace a gas-powered leaf blower, if there's no rebate in place, the cost difference could be prohibitive. And as was noted previously, sounds like it would be prohibitive. So the concern was raised if you have a rebate in place but you haven't prohibited the sale. I'm sensitive to that issue because I agree that it causes confusion. I don't think that that's a good, a best strategy here. But if the concern is we don't have a rebate in place and the point of the rebate is to mitigate the impacts, one of the impacts is replacing your gas-powered leaf blower, and so we're not giving a reasonable choice as we have suggested we were trying to give, where you can buy an electric leaf blower with a meaningful rebate that actually helps mitigate some or all of the difference, or a gas-powered leaf blower with no rebate.
So I don't want to speak for the T&E committee, but what I think they recognized is that in order to replace the leaf blower, you would want to have the rebate program in place. So their proposal, which we agree with, is ban the sale of them. Someone can still continue to use their gas-powered leaf blower. There's no requirement for them to go out and replace it right away. They would not have to replace it until the ban on use goes into effect, and that wouldn't go into effect until there was a rebate program available.
But what happens if it breaks or if it goes out of service? I mean, they don't last forever.
Right. So that's one of the things we want them to know, is that ahead of that's why we want to let them know that the ban is coming in place, so they don't buy a gas-powered leaf blower. So you're saying what would happen if their gas-powered leaf blower broke?
Yeah, you're a landscaping company. Right. You have 5 gas-powered leaf blowers and 5 people who use the gas-powered leaf blowers. That's your business. Mm-hmm. One of those goes out of service, before we have a regulation in place, which means before we have a rebate program in place. What is that landscaping company expected to do? If they have to buy an electric-powered leaf blower, it's thousands of dollars, as we heard earlier, with no meaningful help to support them. I mean, I think
So I'm not sure how, I mean, we can talk about the, we can,
Well, Frederick.
So, I think my colleagues shared they go to another jurisdiction and buy it, which is not a good outcome either. I will yield back. This helped me flesh out. I had concerns about what was raised with having a rebate program while we were still selling, which I think is a concern that I'd like to see fleshed out. But I also have a concern if we're banning the sale in Montgomery County but not providing a meaningful rebate. So if there's a way to align those two things, I would be interested in it, but I'm not sure I have a proposal.
so if I could suggest a way to address that is the timing of the when you purchase a leaf blower, whether the rebate is applicable then. So in the case you gave, the ban on sale is in effect. You can still use them. You have to replace one. And then we have a rebate program developed after the fact. We can talk about the timing. If you purchased it between those two dates, that may be eligible for the rebate. So that's a way to address that problem you talked about. It may be an after the fact reimbursement because we don't have a reimbursement program in place, but someone would be able to get.
I will say for Council Vice President Friedson, appreciate the conversation, but here we have a track record of prohibiting things that we do not want to be used in the county, whether it is prohibiting free plastic bags, prohibiting the use of styrofoam, prohibiting the use of dangerous pesticides on our lawns. And if we decide that this is something that we want to prohibit, it has to be prohibited. Councilmember Sells.
Thank you, President Glass. I know that we have the $100 reimbursement in place. What was the budget for, or it's not at all?
Yeah, as Dr. Hochberg said, the $100 rebate was in the fiscal impact statement. It was based on we got a small grant to provide rebates to people who were interested in electrifying their lawn equipment. And we gave them $100. This was mostly to residential homeowners who wanted. So that's what the fiscal impact statement was based on. We recognize that's not a legitimate reimbursement for a commercial entity that wants to replace a backpack gas leaf blower. So the $100 was, again, is not what we would be proposing.
Okay, because looking at Pasadena, California, when they passed their leaf blower ban, they created a $30 million sole proprietor fund to assist sole proprietors and other small landscaping businesses to assist in the purchase of zero-emission small off-road equipment, including the leaf blowing machines, lawn mowers, and string trimmers. So as we're thinking about, transitioning this equipment and how we're going to support our businesses through this transition, let's think holistically about the gas-powered equipment that is in use. And I think my colleagues have already shared the public health impacts to the communities of color who are largely focused on, who are largely obtaining these jobs, and just the health impacts as well. And hopefully when that legislation comes back to the council, we'll have the environmental impact and in addition to the racial impact of this legislation as well. Thank you.
One thing, if I could, think about the rebate program, one of the things we want to do is benchmark what others have done, because there were rebate programs or reimbursement programs in the district. You mentioned California. That was a statewide program, I think, because a lot of jurisdictions in California had that. So,
the city of Pasadena, not the state. And it was $30 million just in the city alone. So I can imagine for our county, we don't have an idea of how many businesses will be impacted, but we have to think about supporting our businesses through this transition.
Right. So we want to, part of the reason the regulations we're proposing would come back in June of next year is that we want to do the research to fully understand the best way to implement a rebate program. And the county government for good reasons, has put in a lot of measures about how you can procure things, how you can issue rebates to people. There's a lot of steps that go into this. It's more involved than people might think. It won't be DEP just writing a check to people. So we have to make sure we have all that worked out so that we're offering a program that is legal and sustainable in the county. So that's what we're working on with the regulations. The other, if I could just add one more point, I'm sorry.
No,
one of the things we would do right from the start, when legislation is passed, whatever form it is, we would start the outreach process, because that is very important, and that's going to take time. And we've done that. You mentioned lots of things, banning of plastic bags or pesticides or any kind of environmental legislations we passed. Communications is a big part of it, and that would start immediately and would continue for the life of the legislation.
Thank you. Councilmember Katz.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I want to thank Councilmember Albornoz for literally getting into the weeds on this. I had to, never want to miss an opportunity. And Ms. Hochberg, I want to say very publicly, I know that you and your entire team want to work together to come up with a much better solution, and that's why we're having these conversations. I am someone who understands we might not need this amendment, but because we're having this discussion, we're in the world of belt and suspenders, and that's what we're thinking about. I'd like to know information about what's the lifespan of a leaf blower and how much would we need in order to replace all these. And for the point about the idea for when we ban bags and when we ban styrofoam, and we gave the stores ample time to use their supply. We gave restaurants ample time to use the styrofoam covers that they were using. And I think it's very necessary to keep in mind that commercial sales from some businesses work in various jurisdictions. You said that you could buy in Hyattsville. Well, let's face facts, they also buy online. So this is not just let's put a sign up in the local hardware stores. This is trying to get information to a group that was pointed out many times doesn't necessarily read the internet every day. They use it when they need to use it. And to say that there's a $100 rebate, and we keep kicking around that number, I don't know what the right number is, but I can tell you what the right, I don't know what the right number is, but I can tell you what the right number is not, and that's $100. I mean, if you're spending thousands of dollars and somebody says, and I'll give you $100 to straighten this mess out, that isn't straightening anything out. The other thing is that we say that it's going to take, and we need to be instantaneous, whatever the number is, for the rebate. Because if we say to somebody, look, we want you to change the world, there's reason to do this, but it's going to take 3 years for us, or whatever that number is, to get back. That's like telling somebody that they're hungry, but don't worry, in 3 years I'll get you a sandwich. That's not going to work. It's just not. So what we need to do is to keep in mind what we're trying to do. We need to figure out how much we really need, and then we need to figure out how fast we can do it. And I don't know that we have all of that information at this moment. And I think that candidly, that's what we need to come back to have those discussions. Do we need something? Yes. Do we need the industry to understand it? Yes. But I don't think we're there right now. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilmember Katz. I'll again state for the record that there is a Method 2 regulation attached, so nothing has been formulated now, but in order for this legislation to move forward, if it is to be passed, it would require us to come back and take a look at everything that you just wisely and correctly noted. Councilmember Mink.
Thank you. I want to appreciate my colleagues on the T&E committee for all your hard work on this confusing matter. And okay, there was a point at which I thought I had this straight, and I am no longer at that point. So if somebody could clarify for me, and I don't know if that's one of my colleagues or staff, but with the timing, including ban on sale, ban on use, and reimbursements, the timing as it is in the bill as amended by the committee, and then the timing, including all of those parts, in the amendment as proposed by Councilmember Albanese.
Yes. Ms. McCartney-Green.
Okay, great.
Take
Thank
the
you.
hard question. And so let's start from the beginning. As introduced, the ban on sale would occur 6 months after the effective date of this act. As introduced, the ban on use would take effect 1 year. During the February 13 work session with the committee, T&E committee, they amended the second part. So the first part, the 6-month ban, is still in effect. The ban on use would not go into effect until the council has adopted Method 2 regulations. The Method 2 regulations would be submitted to the council no later than June 30th, 2024. What's on the...
I'm sorry, to clarify, and that is how many, that's how long after the effective date as written?
And so the effective date would be 6 months after... effective date of the ban or the use?
Sorry, okay, so the ban on sale is 6 months after the effective date.
Correct.
The ban on use, as amended by the committee,
yes,
is after the Method 2
regulations have been approved by the council.
And what was the timing of when we expect, again, to get the Method 2 regulations back? June 30th, 24.
Yes.
But how does that, what was the effective, I want to have the same point of comparison. So
right.
6 months after the effective date is either, can I have a date for that, or can I have the ban on use compared to?
And I would turn you to line 50 to 54 in the bill,
Okay.
In the bill text. And that's what the council has right now under consideration. That talks about the effective date and the staggered implementation. And so we're talking about the use. And so Section 1 of this act must not take effect until the date the council accepts the executive regulations established under subsection I. And so that's what I'm looking at. So it wouldn't take effect until the council has approved it. And that can happen after June 30th, 2024. Usually Method 2 regulations have to be adopted within 60 days after receipt. And so
okay.
I hope I didn't
No,
okay.
Okay, so how does that compare to when the ban on sale is? What, 6 months after the effective date is going to take us to what date? Anybody?
September of 2023.
So,
okay.
So we're in March now. Yeah, if we're
Okay.
thinking about 6 months.
Okay.
What I will say to you is that what's not written is that our bills don't take effect till really 3 months. So technically, it's 9 months.
Right.
And so if we adopted it today, which we're not, it's not up for a vote, but it would be 9 months from the day that the council adopts
Okay.
the bill.
So looking at December. Okay, so as amended by the committee, ban on sale, we're looking at around December 2023.
If the council considered it.
If we were to pass right away. Ban on use would then be a few months after that, June 30th, 2024 at earliest. That's right, that's when we would get the method.
That's the
when we would
contingent
get-
on the regulation, which
Right.
still then needs to be approved.
Right, that's would be, if we, they could also say, okay, so we get something back from County Executive Elrich, and then we debate for however long we want to. So earliest, then if we instantaneously approved a very timely Method 2 proposal from the County Executive. Okay, so, and then the rebate program, again, as proposed by the committee. What's the timing on that?
So same thing. So the rebate program is also, we would receive, once we receive the regulations concerning the reimbursement program, it would take effect whenever the council adopt those regulations. And so the rebate and the ban would happen concurrently. I think that was the recommendation from the committee.
Okay, and part of those Method 2 regulations, or we could, send it back and ask this, could include a staggered implementation of the rebate and the ban on use at that time, if that was what the council wanted, potentially. I'm just saying, right, hypothetically, that's a thing that could occur.
So, can I?
If she wants to deal too. Yeah.
Can I comment? You have to say yes.
I feel yes, please. A standing yes for you.
Okay. So no, we wouldn't be able to. We would be able to change the regulation, meaning the rebate program. We would not be able to change the implementation date of the ban.
Okay. All right. So as amended by the committee, December 2023, ban on sale, approximately ban on use around whenever we approve the method 2 regulations, summer 24. Okay. And the rebate happening around the same time. Okay, great. Thank you. And then Councilmember Albernaz's proposal, if we could do the same thing. Thank you.
And just to restate, and Councilmember Albernaz, happy for you to clarify as well. So amendment number 1, looking at page 65 for anyone's following along in the packet. Both the ban on sale and the ban of use would not occur until July 1st, 2026. At the same time, the amendment also would take into consideration a rebate program to be offered for 2 years prior to that July 1st, 2026 date. And so that's what's the simplest terms of the amendment number 1.
Okay. Thank you. That was super helpful. Can I comment?
Yes, you still have the floor.
All right. Okay. All right. Thank you for everybody's thoughtful comments. This has been a great conversation. So my thoughts are that I think that it makes sense to have the ban on sale predate the ban on use. I agree that none of these outcomes there's problems, there's with any of these, but I do think that it makes sense to have the ban on sale because I can certainly see very realistically the situation where now we have folks spending their hard-earned money on something that we're going to ban in a few months. And I don't want to do that, especially if we're going to be banning it eventually. I think it makes sense to move forward with that and try to prevent that from happening. I think that the idea of at least partially mitigating the potential harm there or downside there of allowing for retroactive reimbursement during that time period, I think that was a great suggestion. That makes a lot of sense. And I agree that this is something that we want to do. We want to do the ban. We should ban it. So I think I would support banning the, moving forward with it as the committee has proposed, having the ban on sale go in effect prior to the ban on use. And I would absolutely echo all of the comments about the reimbursement amount of $100 being woefully inadequate, and we absolutely need to address that. And I would second Councilmember Katz's request for a clearer picture of the cost of replacements. It would be helpful to have a full cost comparison of gas versus electric. Is that something that you already have on hand, by any chance?
We do have on hand an analysis that was developed by an organization based in Santa Cruz, California. They did a study which we can share with the council members on the return on investment for landscaping companies that have existing gas leaf blowers and what it would cost to replace them with electric equipment and what is the payback period. Of course, we're not California. Our gas prices are different here, but our electricity prices are different as well. But I do think that there's some good lessons learned from that study which we can share.
Okay, thank you. And then also noting that I believe our neighbors in DC have a ban on gas-powered leaf blowers, and so just thinking about the desire to be in alignment with our close neighbors, we certainly have folks who work in both jurisdictions, so just noting that as well. And I yield.
Thank you, Councilmember Mink. Appreciate the questions you just raised, and Director Hochberg, if for the next time the council takes this up, since today is just a work session, if you could provide some of that analysis that has been conducted so that we can have a clearer picture of not only, as you noted, the return on investment, but also some price comparisons as well. Councilmember Albernaz, hopefully we can close out this amendment. There are more amendments to come.
Yeah, and I'm really glad this is a work session. So thank you very much, Mr. Council President, because it is a complicated bill. So I think Councilmember Mink just said it well, sort of reconciling the two, and so therefore I would accept a friendly amendment, and I'm going to try to articulate this, so please help me. Ms. McCartney Green. So I would move that the ban on sale would be enacted after the regulation 2, or the method 2, has been approved by the council, but that the ban on use would continue as proposed in the amendment to occur starting on July 1st, 2026. That would give us time to both come back and accept a rebate that we can all find amenable, and begin that rebate program prior to the ban of use in a reasonable amount of time, that will allow both communities and the landscapers themselves to assimilate. That's what I would move.
It's your friendly amendment. You motioned, and I think Councilmember Luedke seconded. Councilmember Luedke, do you go along with that?
Correct.
Okay, there you go. I have a question regarding this and the timeline, and I don't think it's been asked or addressed. Lots of this conversation has been focused on comparing us to the District of Columbia. Can you share with us the timeline that the District of Columbia, I think it's in the packet, but if you could just articulate what the District of Columbia's timeline has been on their process?
I was just looking up their law yesterday. In fact, Ms. Ludine McCartney Green may have more details, but based on my understanding, the act, the bill was initially introduced in April of 2017. It was passed in 2018. The law took effect on January 1st, 2022, and it prohibits the sale and the use of gas-powered leaf blowers, both portable and handheld, portable including handheld or backpack, and it applies to everyone in DC, including residents and landscapers. The only exemption or exception is for federal government property.
Sure, of which they have no jurisdiction. And so based on the timeline you shared, that was a 4-year period? Is that 3?
3 year to be
Three,
accurate.
okay. 3 years. Okay, important, thank you. Councilmember Jawando, did you have a comment?
Yes, just wanted to understand the amendment, and then I don't think it would be in order, but what you said about the retroactive rebate, because I think what we're all trying to do here is close the window or eliminate the window in which someone would have to purchase, or maybe, whether it be out of Montgomery County or somewhere else, a gas leaf blower before the rebate's available. Right, I think we could all reasonably agree that that's ideal. Yeah, not have to purchase an electric, before the rebate's available. So that window of time, which Councilmember Mink, I appreciated that exercise, between December of 23 and June-ish and summer of 24, where there's going to be a ban on sale, but no rebate, right? That's the period we have right now, which is not ideal. So as opposed to pushing it out 2 extra years, is there a way, which I think is the amendment, the modified amendment by Councilmember Albanaz, is there a way that you can get us the regulation sooner, or push it out, push the ban on sale out a little bit to coincide with the regulation? What do you think about that? And then in light of the time that we just heard, the 3 years, because this is more aggressive than what DC did, what you're proposing, and talk about why.
So I think with respect to the regulation, I would be hesitant to compress that time frame. I know it seems like a long time away, but there are a lot of components that go into that, as I mentioned before. Also, much of the discussion here has been about once the regulation is adopted for the rebate program, then people are getting rebates. That's typically not the way regulations work. You approve regulations and then you develop the program that is governed by those regulations. What you're asking us to do is really to be able to go on day one. So that's another part of that time frame. We're going to have
so that's why you can't compress it. So then address the second part of my question of then why can't you push out the ban on use, which I know I'm arguing against my previous point, but I just trying to be receptive to what's been said here.
Well, I mean, again,
I know it's our prerogative, but talk to me about just would that be workable?
Certainly you could push out the ban on use. That's workable. Absolutely.
The ban on sale, I'm sorry.
Oh, the ban on sale.
Yeah.
My personal belief is that banning the sale soon after the bill is enacted is important because it
As a
sends the
signal.
message
Yeah.
that that in the future you will not be able to use gas-powered leaf blowers. Look at buying an electric option. One thing I would say here is there's a lot of, and everybody has a different viewpoint on the cost of things, right? You can find arguments on both sides. There are people, Director mentioned analysis in Santa Cruz that showed that after 1 year, the electric leaf blower starts to pay off. You are saving money by reductions in the operating cost of an electric leaf blower. So,
like with most clean energy.
I don't necessarily accept the assumption that it's not economically smart for someone to go out and buy an electric leaf blower without getting a rebate. That may not necessarily be true. And again, people are going to have
Over the
different
lifetime of the use.
Not even over the lifetime. Over a very
over a
short
short
time
period
frame,
of time.
you're going to start to recover that.
Okay.
And so, but I understand people have different viewpoints. So, but I mean, you can adjust any of the dates, the sale date, the use
So
date.
what if you put the sale date to line up with the regulation, because there's going to be a big news hit when we pass the regulation, and that's when the ban on sale, and then you go out a year from there, or a period of time from there. That's before 2026, but after 2024. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand.
That's a middle ground. I don't know if Councilman Arnold would be open to that. Okay, he's not open to it, but maybe to other colleagues, it could be a subsequent amendment, because I do think the point at the core of his amendment is an important point of if you banned sale when the regulation is passed, that's a big press hit, and a lot of people will talk about it, and it's no longer on sale, and then you ban use sometime after that because the rebate's in place, because the ban of sale would be in this scenario summer of 24, and then you ban use maybe in the winter of 25 or something. But that's not a friendly amendment, so I'll hold and dispose of this amendment, but I would throw that out there for colleagues as a potential middle ground.
Thank you for that. I think we've had sufficient conversation about this amendment. Councilmember Katz?
Literally 2 seconds. I don't know how we can use the term ban on sale, because people are not necessarily just going to buy it in Montgomery County. And if they buy it online, we don't have authority if someone decides to buy it from a place in California. So I don't know how we can use it. We can say we can ban the use, we can do a lot of things, but we either should be saying that we are banning the use rather than saying that you can't buy it, because they can buy it and they could use it somewhere else as well.
Yeah, I think it's the difference between buying and selling. The law would say you can't sell it in Montgomery County. Someone could buy it outside the county online, as you point out. Yes.
In a place that is physically in Montgomery County, you can buy it if you're sitting in your home or in your warehouse.
Absolutely.
Online.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Thank you. There are, as I noted before, there are a number of things that we prohibit the sale of that might be able to be bought in other Montgomery County, in other Maryland jurisdictions or in other states, but we are here to protect our residents and do what we can. So with that, we have a motion on the floor for an amendment. Ms. McCartney Green, would you like to bring us up to date on this amended amendment?
The friendly amendment offered by Councilmember Albornoz is now amending that instead of the ban be for July 1st, 2026, the ban would actually occur July 30th, 2024, when the regulations would be received by the council. The ban on use would still be in effect for July 1st, 2026. And so we have 2 dates that are now being considered as opposed to 1 date.
Very good. Thank you. All those in favor of that amendment, please raise your hand. That is 5. All those against? And that is 6. The amendment fails. Okay, Councilmember Albornoz.
Mr. President? I'm sorry.
We'll go to Councilmember Albornoz to introduce his third amendment.
Okay, that's all right. And just for clarification, colleagues, the third bullet point on the amendments describes the timeline for the first 2. So it's not a separate amendment, just for clarity. So a couple people have asked that question just for clarification. So the second amendment that I'd like to propose is Acknowledging again that the cubic feet of impact is more than twice as much for gas-powered as an electric, and it's also more than 3 times as expensive, an electric versus a gas-powered. This is obviously going to have an even more severe impact on larger properties where you need to utilize multiple battery packs in order to be able to meet the needs of that particular property. And so this would again allow a longer runway, particularly for the landscaping companies who rely on contracts with commercial properties to give them a longer runway, and also give the industry more time to be able to catch up and have technology that meets the needs that are on the ground right now. So I would propose exempting larger properties of 1 acre or more for a 5-year ban, which would bring us to July 1st, 2031, is when the ban on the use of gas-powered leaf blowers for properties larger than 1 acre would go into effect.
There is a motion. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Luedtke. Any comments?
Yes. So thank you, Councilmember Albornoz, for bringing forth this amendment, and this is one of the reasons I joined on with your proposed amendments. And this was brought as a noise control bill. And when you're talking about noise control and you're talking about size of properties, there's a distinction between folks living on, less than an acre, or living, some in several thousand square feet, yards close together, trying to use powerful tools versus an acre or more. And we have a very large county, a lot of land area, and particularly in my district and in Councilmember Balcom's district, we have a lot of very larger lot sizes that would be affected by this. And I can tell you, I am a proud electric leaf blower owner and a proud electric weed whacker owner, but it does take me multiple rounds, and I justify the need to recharge the batteries as a need to take a break. But we're a do-it-yourself family, and we have to recharge them. We own 2 batteries. It takes a while. So this is significant for folks who have more than an acre to maintain, and gives them more time. And especially, again, reflecting back on the fact that this is a noise control bill. It was not brought as an environmental or fossil fuel banning bill. It was brought as a noise control bill. And you're talking about the difference in decibels being 80 to 90 decibels for a gas-powered leaf blower and 60 to 70 for an electric, right? So I don't think that there's any harm, especially in this particular amendment proposed by Councilmember Albornoz, to extend the date of effectiveness for this regulation for properties over 1 acre of land to July 1st, 2031. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Sales.
Thank you, President Glass. DEP has already communicated the significant immediate savings when transitioning to the electric powered leaf blowers. Regardless of what this bill was introduced for, we know that there are significant health impacts. We know that they disproportionately affect communities of color who use the gas-powered leaf blowers. And we're already talking about banning the sale of the leaf blowers. Councilmember Katz has already talked about the considerable confusion that this would cause business owners and residents if we're still selling these leaf blowers and they're going to have to figure out where to get new ones from. How and who is going to be in charge of the enforcement? Who's going to be assessing the properties? Who's going to make sure that a property meets the 1 acre lot size, and is it the 1 acre of the entire property? Is it 1 acre of the grass area? I'm just really confused at how we're going to enforce this law and be consistent across lots, regardless of the area, because this is not just in the ag reserve, but this would be countywide. And so,
yeah, just oh, sorry, I was going to answer the acreage question.
Okay.
the DEP?
Yeah, you're adjusting your question.
Steve Martin. I'm the guy that manages the enforcement staff at DEP. So, and I'll preface my comments by saying that I'm looking at this from an enforcement perspective. How hard is this to enforce? And I believe that, you know, allowing it for larger properties, while I do kind of understand the thought process there, from an enforcement perspective is going to be a challenge for us. In this bill, you know, anybody can submit a complaint along with a photograph. So, you know, kind of in one way puts the onus on the person who's submitting the complaint to know, well, is this property an acre, 5 acres, or is it 10,000 square foot? So, you know, we are put in a position where we would have to verify the acreage and then go back after the fact and try and figure out, okay, who was the landscaper that was here, deal with the homeowner. And, you know, it would be much easier from an enforcement perspective if we banned the use across all properties.
And how big is your enforcement staff, sir?
We have a staff of 5 people to cover the entire county.
For
now,
a county of 1.1 million residents.
in addition to noise, we also do air pollution, water pollution, and illegal dumping. So we're spread fairly thin throughout the county.
I will not be supporting this amendment, and hopefully my colleagues will join me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Sales. Mr. Martin, I just want to pick up on the point that Councilmember Sales asked about. So, from an enforcement perspective, having being able to enforce all properties is the most fairest and equitable thing. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, in addition to making it enforceable from our point of view. Yes.
Rather than, so explain this a little bit more. So the very limited staff that you have to enforce don't have plat records to know how big a property is, right? I mean, are these the realities that would be, the information and the realities that would be needed when people are on the ground?
Yes, I mean, we do have technology out in the field where we can pull up SDAT things.
Sure.
Check that in the field.
Okay. I'll say from my perspective, and those were leading questions, so thank you, Mr. Martin. I think the fairest and most equitable thing is to have this apply to all properties. I don't think that a home on a quarter or smaller of an acre lot should be subject to this, but a home on multiple acres should not. And then the last question I have for you is, there is concern, we talked about this in committee, but it's important to raise this now. You are not using your enforcement powers in a punitive way, right? Can you walk us through, should somebody take a picture, should somebody report either a neighbor or a contractor who does lawn services, what is the process?
So the process is what I term as compliance assistance. We attempt to bring the folks into compliance. So when we get a complaint, you know, our first step is to try and verify that complaint, and then get in contact with number one, the landscape contractor, and if we can't get them, then we go through the homeowner to figure out who the contractor was. We make contact with the contractor, and we try to educate them, say, hey, you know, there is a new law, you may not be aware of this, and you cannot use this particular type of gas-powered leaf blower in Montgomery County. So education's number one. If education doesn't work, then we can follow that up, you know, with a warning letter. If that doesn't work, we can issue them what's called a notice of violation, which is a formal written notice that you're in violation of the code, and if you don't knock it off, the next step could be a civil citation and penalty. And that's the last step, is the civil citation.
Thank you for that. And, you know, it is important to note that there is nothing punitive in this process, that you're not going out there actively searching for violators. It is a built-in process that we want to enforce the law, but that enforcement is based on education.
Yeah, I would note that with the exception of particularly egregious situations where if we roll up there and they're using 5 gas-powered leaf blowers on this small property, then that's a problem. We're not going to, you know, educate first. We might go straight to a civil citation. That is an option that we have.
Thank you. Last comment I will make, I'll reiterate that I think it is only fair and equitable that a home on 1/4 of an acre should be treated just as a home on 5 or 10 acres. So I will not support this amendment. Councilmember Mink.
Thank you. A couple things. One is in regards to the point just raised. Actually, I've concerns about the discretionary nature of enforcement here. I think that we should be consistent, and I would lean towards education for everyone as being first, as being the route we want to go. And so, you know, moving forward, if there's more thought that colleagues want to give to how we can make sure that that's written in, I would support that effort. Two, I wanted to appreciate Councilmember Albernaz for the significant thought that you put into these really nuanced and difficult issues. You know, and I think has raised very good points here. Unfortunately, I think that the enforcement and our enforcement capacity really does mitigate our ability to enact this amendment. DC had 2,500 complaints their first year. You know, if we had to check every single one to try to figure out exactly what the property looked like, I just don't know how we would possibly do that. And then adding another wrinkle, if we have also the situation of HOAs where a whole neighborhood might hire a contractor, and so to that service provider, that is essentially functioning as one job and one property, but you know, a photo would be of them servicing one particular household. So there's an equity and an enforcement issue there as well. So for that reason, I'm not able to support this amendment, but I look forward to further conversations.
Thank you, Councilmember Mink. Councilmember Ludke.
I just wanted to clarify for everyone, because we've been having a discussion about not being able to enforce things differently on different properties, that we've already approved an amendment that carves out an exception for agricultural use and the ag reserve, so we already do have different enforcement and different requirements for different types of land that we've previously agreed to just this morning. So I just wanted to point that out. And also to note that Amendment 3 proposed by Councilmember Albernaz applies to both residential and commercial properties, and that all of the acreage and specifications are readily available in the State Department of Assessments and Taxation's real property database that is available at any time. Thank you.
Thank you. Not seeing any other comments, I'll ask. Councilmember Balcom, you are correct. You're on my list. I apologize.
No, thank you. So the good news is this is what transparency looks like. So we're all champions of that, so that's great. Just a couple things about the warning. I agree with Councilmember Mink that it just has to be an unbiased warning, citation, then fine for everyone regardless. That's important. I also want to highlight during the committee meeting, Councilmember Stewart did put forth a request for reporting, which is very important of how this program's going. And Councilmember Ludke's point about commercial property. So right after the T&E committee, right after we moved forward on this proposal, I had somebody who was in the audience for a different matter come up to me and say, wait a second, I didn't know that this was going on. This is somebody who's in the system, involved, engaged. So regardless of how long the people inside this building and across the street have been working on this, it's new to a lot of people. And so from the commercial perspective, part of the issue is the technological difference between electric and gas. And so from a large property perspective, and looking at commercial properties, looking at recreational facilities, whether there are tennis courts, golf courses, larger areas, a lot of the same issues of agricultural use is the same for these large recreational properties. So that was one of the issues that I had right after our meeting, was several people calling to attention that this isn't going to work for them from a technology standpoint of the power of an electrical blower and the transportation, transporting these blowers from one place to the other. So I did want to mention that, we're not just talking about a 1 acre home versus a half-acre home. We're talking about very large commercial properties that we need to think about. So that's the point.
Thank you. Final word on this amendment, Councilmember Alanos.
Thanks. So if this amendment doesn't pass, we do have to address the concern that Ms. Balcom raised, because we have to think about the impact on those very large properties. I was trying to be consistent with 1 acre or above, but I think that needs to be revisited before we pass the final bill if this amendment does not move forward. So I just wanted to make that point.
Thank you. Okay, there is an amendment on the floor. All those in favor of the amendment, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. That is 5. All those opposed? And that is 6. The amendment fails. Okay, now I'll turn it over to Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez.
Yes. Following up on the comments that I made earlier today, I would like to offer an amendment. And so, thinking of the workforce and understanding that the workforce are mostly low-income immigrants who are not making any money. They're just barely surviving in this industry. I would like to say that perhaps we should say that in the rebate program, there should be at least $1,000. I'm not going to put that amount on the amendment, but I'm just saying that it has to be significant. It should be for companies that have less than 10 employees. So it really targets people in need. I have no desire to ensure that people who have money, people who are wealthy, can have access to this type of rebate, especially if we make it very substantial, not $100, but maybe $1,000. I'm just putting the number out there for you guys to figure it out. So I think it should be targeted in terms of the community who really needs the help. So that's the amendment. I'm gonna need help to make it sound reasonable. So that's one, but also I wonder if you can also add that, we had a conversation a few minutes ago about reimbursement. That's assuming that people have capital, they have money to actually buy the equipment and then someday get reimbursed. The community that we're talking about, they don't have the type of money today to make that type of investment. You see what I'm saying? So maybe we should have some type of loan program. I don't know if it should be in connection with a green bank, or I don't know, you guys figure it out. But it should be some type of loan program, very low interest, even zero if possible, to ensure that businesses that are low income, small businesses, have access to capital so they can make this transition from gas to electric. So that's my amendment.
Second.
Well, so I just want to clarify, hearing a few different things. One is an amendment to restrict funds for reimbursement to businesses with fewer than 10 employees. And then I heard a financing idea was, right, so the amendment is just 10 or fewer employees?
Yes, I think that's reasonable.
Ms. McCartney Green.
Just so I'm clear, the reimbursement would apply to all county businesses, but your amendment, Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez, is to provide a larger amount for...
Yes, for people in need, like low-income businesses who are...
Without 10 employees or less.
Yes.
So hold on. I just want to clarify the amendment. It is not only, as I understood it, it was restricting the reimbursement to businesses with 10 or fewer employees, not providing additional resources to 10 or fewer.
Yes.
Hold on, can you restate the amendment?
So basically, it's we should be very intentional to the people who need this. Okay, we all want to do the right thing here, but we need to be intentional that we're supporting low income, the businesses with low income workers, right? So I was thinking it should target, like this reimbursement should target companies that have less than 10 employees, okay, to receive this substantial reimbursement. Is that clear now?
So larger employees would not receive the
Well,
reimbursement?
maybe we can have two phases. Maybe the one that has like the large reimbursement should be for low. Maybe we should have two phases. A reimbursement that is large enough to really help companies that are low income, right? Very targeted, and maybe a smaller reimbursement for everybody else, like especially homeowners.
So I just want to unpack this, right? Because part of that is the Method 2 regulation that will be coming regarding how the reimbursements, but you want to add to the legislation that reimbursements can only be received by businesses with fewer than 10 employees. Just want to be very specific about what we're going to be talking about.
I think we need to be intentional. Well, you have a question. Yeah.
Well, hold on, Ms. Edwards. First, we just got to get the motion
Yes,
on the floor. That is the motion.
that's my motion.
Ms. McCartney-Green, you just want to state it for the record?
Yeah, this was, before I state, I just want to make sure that my interpretation is incorrect, but my understanding was that there'd be a reimbursement for all local businesses, and that smaller companies with 10 or less employees would receive a larger amount, and bigger companies would receive a separate portion. I just want to make sure.
That's not what she said.
I understand that, Councilmember Juan. I just want to make sure that my interpretation of what I wrote here is incorrect.
Well, I would say that the amendment should just target companies that have less than 10 employees and to make the reimbursement very significant. Otherwise, all these businesses are not going to survive.
Okay.
The use, if I understood correctly, the use of the term substantial reimbursement was anticipating a Method 2 regulation that would be heftier than $100. That's how I interpret. Okay. So there's a motion.
And I will second it.
Councilmember Jawanda, do you have any?
I have a comment.
Go for it.
Thank you. I think this makes sense. I think it's because we don't know how much we're going to have. This budget is going to be an issue, and we don't know how much money we'll have in this program. And we want it to go, the large companies have a better ability to absorb it, especially with the time that we're giving. And I have an amendment on that coming. And I think to Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez's point, you want to target this assistance to the people who need it the most. And in light of not knowing, one, what the reimbursement is going to be and how much money we're going to have for it, I think this makes this amendment even more important to say that we want it to go to people who are going to need it the most. So that's why I'm seconding it. Now, if something changes down the line and county executive puts $30 million in his budget for this, which, we could revisit it, but I do think it would be important from the outset to limit it and target it on the people who need it the most.
Thank you. Councilmember Sales.
I just wanted to clarify that the Method 2 regulations are going to be studied. You will come back to us with recommendations for how much the reimbursement is, the reasonable amount for the reimbursement, the amount of businesses this may impact, and when will you be coming back to us with that information? Is that in 6 months?
So what the law says is that by June 30, 2024, we would come with a Method 2 regulation.
Okay.
The development of that regulation would include benchmarking what other jurisdictions have done.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I'm not a council member, I'll have the floor, I would advocate that we not restrict in the legislation too tightly what the reimbursement program might be. We hear the desires of the council, we agree with those desires, but if you put something in legislation, we can't in regulation then change that. If we come back to you and say, hey, here's a very innovative program that scales up the way the reimbursement might work, you will have the right to review the regulations and say, no, we don't like that, we're going to reject that. So rather than dictate in the legislation some specifics about how the program should work. It's very difficult, I think, to do that sitting here. There's lots of different inputs that would go into it, and we'd like to bring you that information and work with
I
your
would
staff
agree
on the
that
regulations.
it's premature to make those restrictive amendments that will hinder businesses who have 11 employees and are still small businesses and won't be able to reap the benefits of transitioning to this very important initiative. So I would support waiting for the research and then making a more informed decision. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilmember Balcom.
So I agree with Councilmember Sales on that point. But I also want to just mention that for larger the larger employers employ the same population that we're trying to impact in a beneficial way. So yes, they may have some latitude, but it means that the cost, the significant cost of transition is going to be much larger. So I think that we need to be cautious about setting this. And I agree with the point. It may be 10 employees, it may be 15 employees, it may be 8 employees. We don't know what that number is right now sitting here today.
Thank you. Councilmember Mink. Yes, Councilmember Mink.
Thank you. I appreciate the importance put on looking at the different burdens that are faced by different populations here. I would like to see the economic breakdown of the variety of tiered options. With that said, my expectation is that we will do that through the Method 2 regulations process. And additionally, I want to echo Councilmember Balcom's point about I think whether there's 11 or 10, Councilmember Sales as well. I don't know where the cutoff is here on profit margins and how easily a business can or can't absorb these expenses. So I'd be very hesitant to move forward setting any kind of numbers until we have more data and more information. We have some of these companies that might employ more people, but their profit margins might be comparable. They're doing work on large properties and so on. And I think generally means testing as a general rule is something that we want to be very cautious about. There's regulatory or implementation difficulties that come along with that, and you tend to lose people who may need that assistance. So I think that it's an important issue to look at, and I look forward to having that conversation. And I appreciate it being raised. I don't see that it necessarily needs to be an amendment to the legislation at this point.
Thank you. Councilmember Albornoz.
Thanks. So I agree with the point for sure, but I don't know if 10's the right number, if it needs to be up or down. And this is a seasonal business, so they hire more during the fall season than they do in the winter season, and so there's a variability there. And it's a complex industry for a lot of different reasons. So I do think that we need a little bit more information before I feel comfortable voting on a specific number. But I would like to consider thinking about a Method 1 versus a Method 2, which would give the council more flexibility to make working with the executive branch, still in collaboration, but give the council more authority to achieve what Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez is proposing. So I'm not prepared to move that now because I want staff to be able to process that and maybe come back to the council and go over the pros and cons of a Method 1 versus a Method 2. But I'm not going to support this amendment, not because I don't believe in the intent, but because I think there may be a better way of getting to the same place.
Thank you. Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez.
I love that at least we're talking about it. And that I love that the county executive staff is hearing the intention that we want to have here. Again, I had to said it one more time, I found it disappointed that it was not on the package in a way that it was intentional to ensure that this business will not lead to failing. So I'm going to withdraw the amendment, and thank you, Councilmember Yolanda, for your support, and I look forward to your regulations and see how this could be implemented and being intentional in ensuring that the businesses that are struggling to make ends meet and still making sure that our county continues to look beautiful have the support that they need. So thank you. But thank you so much for your time.
So that's being withdrawn. You support?
I support the withdrawal, and sometimes a second is just so you can discuss it.
A very, very important discussion, and I think as Councilmember Fani Gonzalez noted, DEP is listening to the intention and the direction in which we're trying to set should this move forward. Councilmember Jawando.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I'm glad we had that discussion. Just want to emphasize whichever. I don't. To your point earlier, we don't know a lot of these businesses. The idea that we're going to be able to know who's got what the right number is, I'm skeptical on. But I do think when you bring something back to us, that point needs to be considered. It's the nexus of how much money there is, what the amount is, and how you're going to do that in an equitable way. Realizing, because one of the things we've seen in other programs, and I did a small business rental assistance program. The people who are larger and have their ear to the ground sometimes get to them quicker. And if there's limited money, that is going to happen here. And so that has to be thought about. And I appreciate the point, and there's probably a better way to do it, but I think it's in something we need to be intentional about. I want to go back, and I'm going to offer the amendment which I described as the middle ground for Councilmember Alvarez, because I am concerned about that 9-month window between ban of sale and ban of use. I also appreciate the administration's position of not wanting to push it out too far. So I think, Ms. McCartney-Green, and to my colleagues, the amendment will be, I would like to move that we would tie the ban of sale to the passage of the method 2 regulation, which would be sometime, you have to get that to us by June of 2024, but I'm tying it to the passage of method 2 regulation. Do you understand that first part?
Was that raised by Councilmember?
So restate that one more time.
So the ban of sale would be tied to the passage of the method 2 regulation, which would be summer of 2024.
That was the amendment that we.
No, but then there's a second part.
Okay.
Yeah, the second part is the different part.
Okay.
The ban of use would be 6 months after passage of the method 2 regulation. So what I'm eliminating here is the window of time where there's a ban on sale, where there isn't a regulation with the rebate in place. Does that make sense? Do you know what I'm saying? Yep. So it's because before it gives us a little more time. It's not as much as you wanted, but it eliminates the window of if someone after the ban of sale, when you can't buy it in the store here, there will be a regulation in place with a rebate program that you can apply to. If that's now so that is that workable? So that's the motion. So let me make that.
So Ms. McCartney-Green, can you restate the motion as you understood it?
And I'm sorry, I lost you there on the ban of use. Can you just mention that one more time, Councilman Jawando?
Ban of sale.
I have that.
June, or when the method 2 regulation passes. Ban of use is 6 months after the method 2 regulation passes. Similar to the time of when a bill would go into effect.
Okay. And so, the amendment here is the ban of sale, which currently is 6 months, and Councilman Jawando is amending that to June 30th, 2024. That's when the council is supposed to receive the method 2 regulations from.
No, I'm amending it to when it passes. No later than.
No later than June 30th, 2024.
Right.
Yes. Well.
No.
No.
I'm amending to when we have to receive it by June 30th, 2024.
So that would happen
it's the ban of, it has to be the ban of sale would be when we pass it. Because I think there's a PR thing that day of trying to get it out when we pass or approve, I guess it's probably the proper term, approve the Method 2 regulation.
So the council has within 60 days to approve those Method 2 regulations. And
Right.
so that would happen looking
Sometime
at the,
between July 1st and September 1.
correct. So by September 1st,
That's
2024.
if you want to put it that way, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay, so the ban on sale would be
On or before
September 1st,
upon passage of the Method 2 regulation. I don't know, however you want to say that.
Yes, the Method 2 regulations would need to be passed just by law within 60 days. And so that would occur on or before September 1st, 2024. Is that is that clear?
Hold on. So I just think I'm trying to tie it to the day that is approved. Whatever that day that is. Can't we just say that? Do we have to say a date?
We can, but are we also talking about outreach and PR and having a
Okay,
fixed
so
date?
September 1st, and then 6 months from that date. Then that's fine. We can do it that way. So then, Pat, the ban on sales September 1st, 2024.
Correct.
The ban on use is 6 months
After
later.
that date.
So, Councilmember Durando, if I could make a recommendation.
Sure.
This is a work session.
Sure.
We are going to come back and have a work session action at some point in the next few weeks when it fits into the schedule. Could I ask you to hold on that amendment to refine it so that we all can engage with an understanding? I hear what you're saying, and I think it's worthy of the conversation. But if you could work with Ms. McCartney Green, get some actual wording, and then we'll take it up next time we come to session.
Happy to do that. Just if I could just restate, I think we figured it out. Happy to have people think about it, and we can offer it officially next time. But this is again, the intent here is to close that window of when there's a ban on sale and there isn't a rebate, at least articulated. Now, the question, if I'm not offering it, I do want to ask a question of DEP. Does that give you enough time, that 6-month window, to actually have the rebate plan in place?
I wouldn't sit here and say that that's guaranteed. It depends on what the form of the rebate is and how people apply for it, how the rebate is issued. There's lots of different ways.
So then I would ask that you work with our staff, since we're holding it, to recommend potentially, hopefully you get what I'm trying to accomplish here.
I understand. Yeah.
So recommend a timeline that would make sense. If it's longer than that, fine. If it's a year, but something that closes the window between when the ban on sale and the ban on use in the rebate program. So I would hold on the amendment, but if you could work with our staff over the next week or two to figure that out. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. I appreciate we've landed on a spot that we're able to share that thought, and that it'll be more refined when we come back to full council. Council Vice President Friedson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just briefly, I appreciate that. I was trying to do that originally. I feel like you perhaps did it better than I did. I'm happy to work with you and with council staff. And I was going to say, I think that the time frame, a gap needs to be enough that the rebate program can work. So I appreciate, I think we need to ask, I think that might need to be extended a little bit, but it's something that we can work on if that's a year instead of 6 months or something like that. But I think the bones of what you are suggesting were similar to what I was hoping that we could bring everybody together, and I appreciate you raising that. And I also think that as part of this conversation, Method 1 versus Method 2 is an important question. I think that speaks to the important issues that Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez was raising, and what powers that we will have and what happens when the regulation comes to us. The difference of what type of regulation we select really does matter. So, Ms. McCartney Green, can you just explain to colleagues the difference? Because I do think that is something that ought to be discussed and brought back up based on the conversation, very thoughtful conversation we had here, and some of the major questions that still need to be worked out by the executive branch as part of the regulation and the rebate program. So could you just quickly explain the difference between Method 1 and Method 2?
Real quick, and I will include in my packet just for the council members to review that.
Please.
But there's 3 different methods. I know we talked about Method 2, but there's Method 1, 2, and 3. Method 3 is the lease involved, where the county executive has the opportunity to draft regulations regarding the law that's been enacted, and can publish that in the county register for comments, but that does not go to the council. Method 2 regulation, that's also drafted by the county executive, and that is received by the council and that the council has within 60 days to either approve or not approve. If the council does not review it or approve it within that 60-day time frame, it would automatically go into effect. Then you have your Method 1 regulations where that has to be approved or disapproved by the council, and as mentioned, the council would have more authority and how they would like to tailor that regulation.
Yeah, I appreciate it. The only thing, you can extend, the council does have the authority to extend Method 2, but otherwise, without action by the council, it goes into effect. So I think that should be part of the conversation as well. You can hear there's a lot of interest among council members to have a say in what this program looks like, to ensure that it is targeted to help those who need it the most, to ensure that it's sufficient to meet the needs of the change that we are imposing for reasons that have been stated here. And so I would be supportive of that change as well, and hopefully those two things can be fleshed out before we come back and ultimately approve this. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilmember Katz.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. My concern is that some business that has bought inventory for legitimate inventory there, it's allowed as of this moment that we would ban it the day after or very shortly thereafter, that they would not even have known that they shouldn't have bought this inventory. I don't know how we can communicate to the businesses perhaps who might be buying it, the items, but we need to be very clear for these businesses, because the inventory that they're buying is not inexpensive, and it's not fair to them if they have legitimately bought inventory that's allowed today, and to say, okay, now you got 15 minutes to get rid of this. There's a problem here. So I don't know how we do it, but it's a problem.
Councilmember Glass, if I can just respond or comment on Councilmember Katz's idea. I do know DC requires that the vendors or sellers to actually put a notice that there's a ban that's going into effect. I can look into that a little bit more and to see what on our end for the county, if that's something that can implement as well.
And I think that's the right step, and I think it's a good step for the vendor to know that they shouldn't be buying it, that they should be considering buying something different for the people that they're attempting to supply. Thanks.
Thank you. And Councilmember Katz, that's why I have been supportive of banning the sale in the county long before the ban of the use, to ease people into that transition. Councilmember Balcom.
Thank you. Yes, my original comment was going to be about the Method 1, Method 2 discussion. Particularly, I know that the June 30th, 2024 is the outside date, that it could come sooner, but if we're looking at 60 days, then we've got a summer recess in between that, and so it's from the and it's a complicated. The regulation is going to be just as complicated as the discussion that we've had here, so I think that we need to take that into consideration. But I also just, two other points. One was a comment that was made earlier that the cost effectiveness of electric versus gas, and in the future that business owners, even entrepreneurs, would be able to make up that the cost of the initial outlay. But as many of us spoke up here, sometimes it's not. You can't think about the cost savings if you don't have the money to buy the electric leaf blower in the first place. So I just think that we need to keep that in mind, that it doesn't matter how much money you're going to save 2-3 years from now if you can't afford to buy it right now. But then a piece that we haven't discussed yet today, but we did discuss it at the committee level, and that's the county's responsibility to move. The county can move now to move into electric leaf blowers. So that will be a budget discussion that we'll all have to be conscious of, that I'd like to see the county take the lead and moving to all electric leaf blowers as quickly as we can. The county use of leaf blowers.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Councilmember Balcom. Councilmember Stewart.
Just super fast, since you're looking into timing on a number of things, given what Councilmember Katz said about especially our smaller hardware stores, we know the use of leaf blowers is very seasonal. And I'm sure there's probably a time in which they're thinking about purchasing their stock. And so as you're looking at the impact on different timing of things, I just ask that perhaps we do some outreach to some of our the stores that we know carry this and for whom are smaller, and the order they put in has a bigger impact, and when they usually put in their orders for leaf blowers and things, because I think that could impact the timing of what we do. So thank you.
Thank you. Final comment on this, Councilmember Albornoz.
Thanks. Just to highlight a couple of points. One, so there's obviously universal concern regarding the rebate amount. DP has acknowledged that the $100 was just sort of out there, but that may not be the actual amount. This is a zero-sum game. So $100,000 is going to be woefully inadequate given how many businesses are going to be impacted by this. And so I don't know what the right figure is, but in a week we're about to receive the county executive's budget. And we're going to have to make some very difficult decisions within each of our respective committees, along with a record level request from MCPS. And so we do need to take that into consideration with implementation of this bill, because it has to be done with fidelity. I think I'm hearing that across the board. And if it can't be, then we have to acknowledge that, because this is going to disproportionately impact people in a way that frankly is unfair. And I do want to credit DEP. I know there was an attempt, there was an effort to reach out to the landscaping industry in anticipation of the bills, and there were a couple of meetings. I acknowledge that there was an effort. But you acknowledge this industry as a whole is spread out across the entire region, and sometimes these businesses don't originate in Montgomery County. They originate out of somebody's house in Prince George's or Northern Virginia or Frederick or even West Virginia. So it's hard for us to completely get our arms around the industry as a whole, but we know who's working in this space. And the last 2 points are 5 folks in charge of all of this regulation, and the last council passed some historic regulation. And similar to the Office of Human Rights, we do have to have a broader question about the ability to actually implement policies and laws that we enact, because saying to the public, this is a law, but it's sort of not really a law because we can't really enact it, so you should feel better about it, that we shouldn't be doing the law if we can't enact it in a way that is reasonable. There's another way of getting around to this. So, but just to summarize, agree with the method one. Since the bill on larger properties failed, I'll work with staff on an additional amendment to take into account those larger recreational spaces. And I know that this is scheduled for work session in action in a few weeks, but I'm not entirely confident that we're going to be able to wrap this up in one work session in action. Maybe we can, but I just like to leave open the possibility that if we're not able to fully address the concerns of all colleagues, that to be taken into account as far as the timing of when the bill would be enacted and implemented. And I remember this one last thing. Communication, we've talked about that, but I'd like to better understand from DEP, not right now, but what would your communication plan be, if you could articulate it, to reach out to the various businesses and how this would be rolled out. It would be helpful to know that, and also what you're thinking in terms of the citation and what that number might be. So when we follow up, I'd love to follow up on those items, but I appreciate the robust conversation.
Really good conversation, colleagues. First true work session of this council, and appreciate everybody's participation and ideas. We will have another work session where we will continue to flush out some of these ideas, whether it's Regulation 1, another amendment, or possibly more. So I will speak with you all individually about the next steps. But with that, this item is done for today. And last thing between us and recess is approval of the consent calendar. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar? Moved by Council Member Giwando, seconded by Council Vice President Friedson. All those in favor, raise your hand. That is unanimous. We are now in recess. Thank you.